на саміт Support Ukraine – Підтримуй Україну. І сьогодні у цій залі, в якій поки що відбуваються попередні підготовчі моменти, зустрічі, спілкування, дискусії, діалоги, розпочнеться сам саміт. Тут уже присутні представники міжнародних провідних медіа, громадських організацій, дипломатичних представництв і, звісно, очікуємо на лідерів країн, очільників делегацій і очільниць делегацій, які прибули на сьогоднішню подію і які разом із нашим президентом Володимиром Зеленським розпочнуть цю важливу подію із тими актуальними, надважливими заявами, на які очікує і український народ, і очікує весь світ. Нагадаємо, що зараз ми очікуємо на початок міжнародного саміту «Підтримуй Україну» – Support Ukraine. Ми перед цим зустрічали очільників міжнародних делегацій, і я коротко нагадаю, хто саме із лідерів міжнародних країн, міжнародних організацій, міжнародних делегацій, які прибули в нашу країну, очільників країн, будуть на цій події. Зустрів і відкриватиме цю подію президент України Володимир Зеленський, а також уже прибули на нашу подію, на наш саміт, президент Фінляндської республіки Олександр Стуб, президент Латвійської республіки Едгарds Рінкевичс, президент Литовської республіки Гітанас Наусєда, президент Європейської ради Антоніо Кошта, президентка Європейської комісії Урсула фон дер Ляєн, прем'єр-міністр Канади Джастін Трюдо, прем'єр-міністрка Королівства Данія Метте Фредеріксен, прем'єр-міністр Естонської республіки Крістен Міхал, прем'єр-міністрка Ісландії Крістун Фростадоттер. От зараз ми бачимо, як вони, лідери міжнародних країн, вибудовуються для такої family фото на згадки нашої події. Далі продовжу список міжнародних гостей, яких ви бачите зараз уже на цьому фото. Прем'єр-міністр Королівства Норвегії Йонас Стьоре, глава уряду Іспанії Педро Санчес, прем'єр-міністр Королівства Швеція Ульф Крістерсон, генеральний секретар ОБСЄ Ферідун Сенір Ліоглу, міністр із європейських справ Французької республіки Беджаман Хаддад. І зараз усі вони, лідери цих держав, організацій, міжнародних інституцій щойно фотографувалися із президентом України безпосередньо перед входом на саміт. Шановні пані та панове, вітайте їх високоповажності. Президент України Володимир Зеленський, президент Фінляндської республіки Олександр Стуб, президент Латвійської республіки Едгарс Рінкевичс, президент Литовської республіки Гітанас Наусєда, президент Європейської ради Антоніо Кошта, президентка Європейської комісії Урсула фон дер Ляєн, прем'єр-міністр Канади Джастін Трюдо, прем'єр-міністрка Королівства Данія Метте Фредеріксен, прем'єр-міністр Естонської республіки Крістен Міхал, прем'єр-міністрка Ісландії Крістон Флорадоттер, прем'єр-міністр Королівства Норвегія Йонас Стьорре, глава уряду Іспанії Педро Санчес, прем'єр-міністр Королівства Швеція Ульф Крістерсон, генеральний секретар ОБСЄ Ферідун Сенір-Ліоглу, міністр із європейських справ Французької республіки Беджаман Хаддад. Пані та панове, вітаємо вас на саміті Support Ukraine – Підтримуй Україну. Слово має президент України Володимир Зеленський.
Окей. Дуже дякую, шановні учасники нашої зустрічі, шановні лідери, шановні наші друзі, народи країн, які підтримали нас в Україні, а отже, і своє власне право на незалежність. Сьогодні треті роковини від початку цієї війни. Сьогодні ви бачите нашу столицю, нашу країну, ви бачите наших людей. З лідерами, які прибули в Київ, ми почали цей день зі вшанування пам'яті наших воїнів, які віддали своє життя заради України. Лідери, які сьогодні з нами офлайн і онлайн, всі підтримують Україну, наш суверенітет, наш захист, нашу територіальну цілісність. Як і тоді, так і сьогодні ми всі знаємо, що це абсолютно неспровокована та злочинна війна Росії проти України, загарбницька війна. Як і тоді, так і сьогодні важливо це знання не приховувати і називати речі своїми іменами. Будь-який дієвий спротив народу у війні засновується саме на усвідомленні правди. Правда, яка об'єднує людей в країні та усіх в світі, хто підтримує. Я дякую усім вам, шановні друзі, дякую вам за підтримку, дякую усім нашим людям в Україні, усім українцям вдячний, усім українцям в світі, які підтримали свою державу. І дякую за те, що ми за 3 роки не втратили головного – єдності, не загубили правди, не зрадили своїй меті, надійному, тривалому миру для України, справедливому миру. В якій точці ми сьогодні? 24 лютого 2025 року, через 3 роки від початку путінської 3-денної спеціальної військової операції «Україна жива», бореться, і у нашої держави друзів у світі більше, ніж будь-коли. Ніхто у світі не вірить російській брехні про нашу державу, наших людей. І навіть ті, хто, на жаль, став спільником Росії у війні, хто бреше разом з нею, усі вони розуміють, кого і в чому вони підтримують. Вони можуть зробити різні кроки, вони можуть заробити якісь гроші на своїх відносинах з Росією зараз, але ніколи не здобудуть повагу. І наша повага зараз українців, українок, також мільйонів людей в всьому світі, наша повага усім вам і таким лідерам і народам, як ваші. які з нами від початку, які допомогли врятувати тисячі життів, які допомагають нам захищати наше небо та зберігати позиції на фронті, які розбудовують разом з нами виробництво зброї, щоб наповнити і наші, і свої арсенали, які прихистили українців, коли це було так потрібно, які не мовчать, а коли світ повинен чути, що відбувається, і які ми це дуже цінуємо, підтримують сильну дипломатію заради миру. Дорогі друзі, цей рік повинен стати роком початку реального надійного миру. Путін не подарує нам цей мир, не віддасть його в обмін на щось. Ми маємо здобути мир силою, мудрістю і єдністю, нашою з вами співпрацею. Про мир неможливо просто оголосити за 1 годину, неможливо оголосити за 1 день сьогодні, завтра, післязавтра. На жаль, така реальність. І якщо хтось спробує це зробити, і саме так, без будь-якої опори, це не спрацює, без будь-яких гарантій безпеки це не спрацює. Надійний і тривалий мир – це значно більше, ніж тиша на фронті. Ми пам'ятаємо, що з 2014 року, саме з 2014-го, більше 25 разів Росія порушила режим припинення вогню. До речі, коли генерал Келох був в Україні, я передав йому і передав президенту Сполучених Штатів Америки документ з переліком всіх сізфаєрів, з конкретними датами, які Росія зламала. Тому мир може бути наслідком зваженої дипломатії та абсолютно чітких гарантій безпеки. Перше, війна триває проти України, і тому Україна має бути за столом перемовин. Разом з Європою. Стратегічною мішенью Росії є саме Європа, європейський спосіб життя, а отже її безпека та доля Європи не може визначатися без Європи. Україна, Європа разом з Америкою. Ми маємо бути за столом перемовин навпроти Росії, щоб необхідність миру не була знов заговорена обіцянками про нормалізацію, перезагрузку чи замирення. Друге, завершення війни має починатися з кроків, що відновлюють довіру до самої ситуації, бо довіри до Росії немає. І треба ситуація, в якій говорять про завершення війни. Реальна ситуація. І зараз таким кроком може стати звільнення полонених. Саме тисяч людей, які утримуються в Росії. І частина з них не тільки з 22-го року, а значно раніше, ще з 14-го року. Росія повинна відпустити українців. Україна готова до обміну всіх на всіх, і це справедливий варіант. Третє, Україна і багато хто у світі стверджує, що НАТО зараз є найбільш простим, дешевим, надійним способом гарантувати спокій та мир в Європі. І це дійсно так. Це вже готова і ефективна система гарантій безпеки, яка працює десятиліттями та яка не допустила розпалення війни навіть там, де є кордон між НАТО і Росією. А це довгий кордон. Ми маємо чесно говорити, Україна заслуговує не тільки на членство в ЄС, але й на гарантії безпеки, які дає НАТО. І якщо членство в НАТО для України, для наших людей і надалі залишиться закритим, у нас з вами не буде іншого вибору, ніж будувати НАТО в Україні. Тобто забезпечувати таке фінансування, такі контингенти, таке оборонне виробництво, які означатимуть гарантований мир. Чи зможемо ми зробити це самі? Ні. Ні. І я вдячний всім вам, і я вдячний всім нашим партнерам, хто готовий допомагати. Гарантії безпеки – це ключ до миру, і чим надійніше вони будуть, тим довше будуть зберігатися мир. Четверте, у нас вже 28 двосторонніх безпекових угод з партнерами, і майже з усіма, хто бере участь в сьогоднішній зустрічі. І це дуже чіткі зобов'язання, які роблять сильнішою Україну і ваші країни. Це оборонні, фінансові, політичні речі, які працюють передусім на нерозширення цієї війни. І нам потрібно збільшувати те, про що ми домовились з вами на двосторонній основі. Більше взаємодії, більше оборонного виробництва, більше фінансової стійкості, більш технологічні речі і те, що безпосередньо захищає життя людей, розвиваючи українську протиповітряну оборону. Ми створюємо основу нового європейського повітряного щита. Будь ласка, кожне зобов'язання щодо ППО, воно критично важливе. І на основі цього початкового фундаменту ми разом маємо створити дієву, достатньо для безпеки систему гарантій, для справедливого тривалого миру для України та всієї Європи. І п'яте, ми всі бачимо, яка турбулентність почалась в глобальній політиці. Але будь-які проблеми – це можливості. Збереження свободи в Європі прямо залежить від здатності нас, усієї Європи, стати щонайменше в безпеці незалежними. І ніколи Європа не може дозволити собі відставати в глобальній технологічній конкуренції. Зараз, на жаль, є моменти, фіксується таке відставання. І тільки у єдності, саме як об'єднаний континент, ми можемо це відставання виправити. Не хтось один саме для себе, а європейці разом для Європи, для всього світу. І всі партнери разом заради спільних завдань. 24 лютого не стало щасливим днем для Путіна, і саме тому, що ми всі об'єднались, українці в своєму домі, європейці на своєму континенті, Америка об'єдналась з Європою, сімка і всі у світі, хто відчув, яким несправедливим є вторгнення Росії. Зараз варто робити більше, ніж вчора, підтримувати одне одного більше, ніж будь-коли, щоб в цьому році можна було сказати, ми зробили все, що могли і мусили зробити, і ось мир є. Я хочу подякувати всім вам за підтримку, за те, що ми разом. Я пишаюся нашою з вами співпрацею, я дуже пишаюся нашою з вами дружбою. Дякую дуже. Слава Україні!
Пані та панове, модератор заходу.
Президенти, шановні лідери, шановні учасники, для нас сьогодні велика честь вітати вас в Києві, столиці країни, яка воює в особливий день, треті роковини повномасштабного російського вторгнення на саміті «Підтримуй Україну». Російська агресія почалась понад 11 років тому, і цілі Росії залишаються незмінними. І ви були з нами від перших секунд повномасштабного вторгнення. Ми це дуже цінуємо і ніколи не забудемо. Наші рішення визначають, в якому світі житимуть наші діти. Українські воїни мужньо відстоюють наші спільні інтереси та цінності на полі бою. І ми вдячні нашим надійним союзникам. Ваша підтримка є фундаментально важливою для продовження цієї боротьби. Тепер хотів би надати слово нашим шановним гостям. І для мене велика честь запросити виступити його високоповажність пана Гітанаса Наусєду, президента Литовської Республіки. Литва є одним із трьох найближчих балтійських друзів, які об'єднались у боротьбі за свободу та безпеку від російського тероризму. Будь ласка, пане президенте.
Дякую, пане Володимире. Друзі, третя річниця цієї кровавої війни не принесла якогось полегшення в Україні. І останні події, вони приносять лише занепокоєння, аніж чіткість. Втім, ми не маємо розчаровуватися. Це не конструктивний спосіб, як можна діяти у подібній ситуації. Саме тому я приїхав сьогодні сюди для того, щоб сказати, що ми маємо залишатися об'єднаними, підтримувати Україну ще більше, ніж раніше. Я впевнений і знаю, що всі ми сьогодні зібрали для того, щоб підтвердити нашу потужну рішучість дотримуватися принципів статуту Організації Об'єднаних Націй. Я хотів би викласти свої пропозиції для всіх лідерів країн, які підтримують Україну. По-перше, ми маємо невідкладно забезпечити підтримку України сучасним озброєнням відповідно до потреб, зокрема системами ППО та спроможностями нанести удари на велику дальність. Крім того, маємо переконатися, що немає жодних обмежень на застосування цієї зброї. Литва забезпечить додаткові системи ППО, як ми домовлялися. Далі ми повинні інвестувати у військову промисловість і військово-промисловий комплекс України, і ми маємо робити більше. Ми маємо забезпечувати спільне виробництво з Україною, адже технологічний потенціал України є надзвичайно великим, і це зможе надати додаткову можливість і військові спроможності, зокрема у сфері подальшого збільшення військового виробництва. Ми маємо розширити програми підготовки для Збройних сил України. Ми маємо посилити їх військову готовність, бойову ефективність та подальші інтеграції з силами НАТО. Ми маємо провести також ці навчання і на території України. Четверте, сьогодні разом з нашими північними та балтійськими друзями ми будемо надавати як військову техніку, так і навчання для підрозділів рівня бригада. П'яте, ми повинні забезпечити подальше забезпечення військових потреб України, і ми будемо надавати 0,25% ВВП на військову підтримку України. Ми зараз робимо ще більше. Зараз настав час лідерства. Ми, європейці, маємо взяти нашу відповідальність без жодної затримки, адже безпека Європи залежить від безпеки України. Саме тому дозвольте нам прискорити вступ України до Європейського Союзу. Я пропоную дату 1 січня 2030 року. І відкриття перших переговорів, першого кластеру можна зробити вже протягом кількох тижнів. Давайте зробимо шлях України до єС невідворотнім. І наостанок я хотів би зазначити, що Україна потребує справжні гарантії безпеки. Членство в НАТО – це найкращий, найбільш ефективний і довгостроковий, і, я впевнений, найбільш дешевий варіант. Цей варіант повинен залишатися на столі для того, щоб посилити переговорну позицію України. Дякую.
Пане президенте, дуже дякуємо за ваш виступ. Тепер я запрошую до слова його високоповажність пана президента Анджея Дуду, президента Республіки Польща. Польща є незмінним партнером і оплотом, коли йдеться про підтримку української боротьби. Ми ніколи не забудемо принципову позицію Польщі у 2022 році і весь час після. Прошу.
Пане президенте Володимире, ваші високоповажності, президенти, прем'єр-міністри, наші друзі з України, сьогоднішня подія має надзвичайно важливе значення, оскільки вона відбувається у вільному і гордому Києву. Путін хотів захопити Україну за 3 дні, але не зміг це зробити навіть за 3 роки і ніколи не зможе. Це справжня міра рішучості, віри у незалежність українського народу та свободу. Пані та панове, Польща буде продовжувати вести послідовну політику по відношенню до України. Польща допомагала Україні. Ми були першою, хто визнав незалежність України в 91-му році. Ми вас підтримували під час помаранчевої революції. Ми допомагали Україні, коли президент Лех Качинський попереджав світ про можливе вторгнення Росії в 2008 році, коли російські танки йшли на Тбілісі. Я особисто відвідував Київ разом з президентом Науседою 23 лютого 22 року. Буквально за кілька годин до початку повномасштабної агресії Росії, для того, щоб висловити солідарність з Україною і для того, щоб продемонструвати польську допомогу у складні часи. Саме тому я хочу вас запевнити, що ви завжди можете розраховувати на Польщу і що ми ніколи не полишимо демократичну та незалежну Україну. І ми також продовжуватимемо послідовну політику по відношенню до Росії. Ми завжди попереджали про справжні наміри Кремля. Більше того, ми є серед тих країн, які відчули дух російського імперіалізму, і ми попереджали світ роками, до чого це зможе призвести. Більше того, ми попереджали Європу про збільшення залежності від енергоносіїв з Росії, бо ми чудово знали, що це лише ще один тип зброї, яка використовується Москвою. На жаль, ми виявилися правими. І хоча наш голос не був почутим, але цей свіжий досвід і пам'ятаючи про нашу спільну історію, ми в Польщі будемо продовжувати послідовно дотримуватися нашого підходу до Сполучених Штатів. Не буде кращого гарантора безпеки, ніж Північно-Атлантичний альянс. І з Сполученими Штатами як одного з цих ключових членів. Саме тому протягом свого перебування на посаді я постійно висловлювався за підвищення присутності Сполучених Штатів в Польщі та в Європі. Ми при цьому не забуваємо той факт, що не буде сильного НАТО без сильної Європи. Таким чином, як президент Польщі, я пропонував минулого року підвищити витрати на оборону принаймні до 3% ВВП усіма країнами-членами НАТО. В Польщі ми вже витрачаємо майже 5% ВВП, оскільки ми знаємо, наскільки важливою це є для нас, для нашої безпеки і для нашого регіону Європи. Лише військово потужна Європа може надати допомогу Україні і надати надійні безпекові гарантії. Пані та панове, в цей день, коли ми згадуємо про повномасштабне вторгнення Росії до України, я хочу наголосити, що всі ми тут хочемо миру. Але той мир, який ми намагаємося отримати, має бути справедливим, довготривалим і має основуватися на гарантіях безпеки. Більше того, Україна має бути представлена від самого початку офіційних переговорів. В іншому випадку недовготривалий мир швидко перейде у нову війну, можливо, навіть більш кроваву. Дякую.
Дякую вам дуже, пане президенте. А зараз я радий запросити до виступу його високоповажність пана Франка-Вальтера Штайнмаєра, федерального президента Федеративної Республіки Німеччина. Німеччина – незмінний лідер у реалізації найбільш важких завдань на підтримку України. Ми цінуємо це та розраховуємо на вашу подальшу роль лідера. Будь ласка.
Пане президенте Володимире, пані та панове, дозвольте мені проголосити основний меседж від самого початку, тому що дуже важливо сказати, що моя країна, ми мали вибори вчора, і сьогодні ми бачимо, що є переважна більшість німців, які проголосували за демократію, за Європу, за Україну, яка боронить свою демократію. І, що є більш важливо, німці не забули, що сталося 3 роки тому. Ніхто з відкритими очима і з відкритим серцем не може заперечувати правду. Саме Росія розпочала цю війну. Саме Росія відправила танки на Україну 3 роки тому. Саме Росія хоче знищити Україну і загрожує вільній і демократичній Європі. Таким чином, шановні колеги, що відбувалося протягом останніх кількох тижнів? Росія, можливо, отримала якусь можливість щось передати Білому домі, але легітимності вона при цьому не отримувала. Нічого з того, що вона робила протиправного, не стало відповідним до закону. Ніщо не є забуто. Чи хтось може дійсно подумати, що якісь розмови чи заяви можуть якимось чином порушити нашу рішучість, щоб ми стали зробити неправильний вибір? Ні. Якраз останні кілька тижнів посилили нашу рішучість як європейців, більш ніж це було раніше. Ми маємо стояти за наші цінності і за Україну. Протягом 3 років народ України боровся за свою свободу кожного дня, кожної ночі. Ми повинні зробити все можливе, щоб мужність і пожертва українців не були просто так. Ми повинні зробити все можливе для того, щоб Україна досягла справедливого та довготривалого миру. Хто б що не казав, немає сенсу проводити переговори без України. Ми маємо зробити все можливе, аби Україну не змушували ухвалити погану згоду. Мир необхідно виграти всіма нами разом. Це наша відповідальність. Якщо в нас стане бажання це робити, то в нас буде і сила це зробити. Європа вже стала найбільшим підтримником України, адже
The people of Ukraine and the people of Europe expect us to uphold Ukraine's freedom and the security of Europe. Germany must be a strong partner for Ukraine and a strong pillar in Europe throughout the coming weeks. The democratic leaders of Germany are aware of their great responsibility, and I will hold them to their words. You can count on Germany. Thank you so much.
Дуже дякуємо. Маю приємність надати слово його високоповажності пану Едгарсу Ренкевичсу, президенту Латвійської Республіки. Ваша країна ставить дуже високу планку у хоробрості та силі у підтримці України та протистоянні російському імперіалізму. Прошу, пане президенте.
Thank you very much, dear President Zelenskiy, dear Volodymyr, Excellencies, dear colleagues, friends. Exactly 3 years ago, as a Foreign Minister of Latvia, I was here in Kyiv when Russia started its unprovoked, brutal invasion of Ukraine. And it was already clear then that Ukrainians will resist. I think that today we admire the brave Ukrainians for their fight. We stand with Ukraine, we support Ukraine, and I think that we all see that Ukraine has shown the world true resilience in its fight for the good and in its fight for its people. But it has also come at a great cost. People kidnapped and tortured, lives lost. Thousands of Ukrainian children have been abducted and are forced to live in Russia or occupied territories. And it is absolutely clear that it cannot be left in vain. Ukrainians deserve just peace. Ukraine must be at the negotiation table, not on the table. Europe must be at the table as well. As you said yesterday, dear Volodymyr, this is our table. And we must ensure that Ukraine is strong and independent. Russia is contained and deterred. Borders are not changed by force. Europe takes full responsibility for its security by investing in its own defense. Ukraine, Europe, and the United States work together to achieve durable peace. Europe is more powerful, as some critics may say, but what we need is a strong will. Today is a pivotal moment for the world and Europe. Europe must be brave like Ukraine and use Russian frozen assets for Ukraine. Europe must be brave to make fast decisions on budget deficit rules to finance security and defense. And Europe must be brave to mobilize our resources and ensure that Ukraine gets everything it needs on the battlefield and beyond. Latvia, with Nordic Baltic countries, have been among the strongest supporters of Ukraine, and we will remain so. As President Nausėda just said, the Nordic Baltic countries are pledging to support Ukraine by providing equipment and training for a scalable brigade-sized unit. My own country devotes 0.25% of GDP to Ukraine's military aid. We will continue to do that. Dear colleagues, to be strong like Ukraine, it is time to step up our efforts in defense and deterrence, boost defense industry. We need weapons now and not in 10 years, for both Ukraine and also for ourselves. Unfortunately, the age of hard power has re-emerged, and we need hard power. Europe must act now. Latvia has made the decision to invest 4% of GDP in defense, with the aim to reach 5% in the near future. And I think that the new norm for NATO and Europe is 3.5% of GDP. Ladies and gentlemen, we all want just and lasting peace for Ukraine. In order to achieve this goal, we need the United States, its commitment and goodwill. Equally, we need to step up European responsibility and effort. And we are at the opening of this process. Search for the best solution is not an easy one. And I believe that Ukraine, Europe, the United States can and should work to achieve this goal. We sometimes have disagreements, we sometimes have harsh rhetoric, but it is important that we all search for solutions. If we try hard, we definitely are going to succeed. Slava Ukraini!
Дуже дякуємо, пане президенте. В Україні лунає повітряна тривога. Ми пам'ятаємо, що ми зараз живемо у час, військовий час, тому ще раз хотів це нагадати. І прошу взяти слово його високоповажність пана Петра Павла, президента Чеської Республіки. Чеська підтримка надзвичайно важлива. Ми цінуємо чеську артилерійську ініціативу, яка є успішною та інноваційним інструментом, який підтримує нашу боротьбу. Прошу, пане президенте.
Thank you. Dear Volodymyr, dear colleagues, heads of states and governments, European Commission and European Council, it's great to see us all around the table, both physically and online, in support of Ukraine. For all of these 3 long years, when Russia is waging a full-scale war against Ukraine, I have no doubt that the ultimate goal of this aggression has always been to wipe Ukraine as we know it off the map. Yet the resilience of the Ukrainian people has proven to be unbreakable, and it deserves not only our admiration, but also our full respect. We all sincerely want a peace in Ukraine and for its people, but not a peace at any cost. A peace built on the humiliation of the victim, one that rewards Russia for its aggression, would not be a true peace. It would be a betrayal. We Czechs know all too well what such a betrayal feels like, having experienced it with the 1938 Munich Agreement. Any deal must be negotiated and accepted by Ukraine. It is obvious that every negotiation must begin with a clear recognition who is the aggressor and who is the victim. No room for ambiguity here. Volodymyr, you were democratically elected by the Ukrainian people, and your legitimacy remains unquestionable. As Ukraine is fighting every day for its survival, this is neither the moment nor it is practical or just to weaken leadership, but rather to ensure stability and resilience. And you, Volodymyr, are a symbol of this resilience. It is our collective duty to help Ukraine resist and prevail in this war. Without peace in Ukraine, there can be no lasting peace in Europe. We need to get ourselves together and to act now. Deterring Russia is the only way forward. Today, I would like to stress 5 points. First, We must collectively continue helping Ukraine build up its own robust defense capabilities. And Czech companies are already contributing and will do its part in the future as well. Second, it is crucial to continue with military supplies to Ukraine. In this regard, the ammunition initiative and all other similar initiatives have proven effective. Third, I fully support the idea of a joint EU loan by providing arms to Ukraine and for further macroeconomic further macroeconomic aid. Fourth, the process of Ukrainian accession to the EU and incorporating Ukraine into the European single market must accelerate. And fifth, we must ensure that Ukraine is in the strongest possible position for negotiation with the ultimate goal of a future NATO membership. Too much is at stake. Either we allow our sovereignty to erode piece by piece and fade into irrelevance, or we manage to step up and never to be sidelined again. Dear colleagues, I'm confident that Europe is stronger and more capable than we often realize. Dear Volodymyr, let me reaffirm that Czechia will continue supporting your country by all necessary means. We will stand with Ukraine. Slava Ukraine.
Дуже дякую. Важність пана Андрея Пленковича, прем'єр-міністра Республіки Хорватія. Ми надзвичайно цінуємо вашу незмінну підтримку і допомогу Хорватії. Дякую, прошу.
Thank you very much, Andriy. Dear President Zelensky, dear colleagues, both in Kyiv and in the capitals. First of all, let me greet you and extend once again Croatia's and my personal support and respect for Ukrainian people, Ukrainian soldiers, for Ukrainian leadership, and especially you, President, for having endured for the last 3 years the brutal Russian aggression and the invasion on your country, which is a repetition of more than 10 years ago. Ukrainians have shown incredible resilience. They have shown heroism. They have shown strong desire to defend its freedom, its territory, its land. But you have also demonstrated a strong message to the rest of the world that the violation of international law and the international order and the values that we all share and that the world has been functioning on over the past 8 decades is something that Ukrainians respect and want to live with. Croatia has been not only a historical friend of Ukraine and the Ukrainians, but one of those countries who has 30 years ago found itself in a similar situation, facing a stronger adversary, facing aggression, and facing occupation of its territories. How did we prevail and how did we overcome? It took us time to gain strength and to reach the balance of power, and even to use the potential of, at the time, Croatian military and Croatian police to regain back our territories. The other part of occupied territories we reintegrated peacefully with the help of the United Nations mission in Croatia, the only 100% successful mission of this kind, reintegrating the territory and ensuring Croatia's territorial integrity. The lessons of Croatia can be very helpful and useful for Ukraine. And that's why I would like to say a few points today. Only strong Ukraine, economically, financially, and militarily, with our joint support and delivery of more military assistance, will be able to guarantee its freedom and to guarantee the security of its people. Second point is that the peace efforts which are currently on the table should be leading to a just, comprehensive peace that will not violate the principles of international law, and that is your sovereignty and your territorial integrity. Peace should not be seen in the wider political and mediatic space as an opportunity to comment that it was a forced capitulation of Ukraine. Peace should not be seen as an opportunity to leave the political space to Russia to claim victory. Peace should not be seen as an opportunity to say that the Western allies and partners and friends of Ukraine have been led into the position that would be contrary to everything that we have been standing for over the past 3 years. Peace should be stopping the killing, but should immediately include the plan of the reintegration of your occupied territories. That is the just way to continue. That should be the way where the European Union should voice and articulate its strong stance. Slava Ukraini, and thank you for being with you today, and thank you for Ukrainians for showing us the strength and the thrive for freedom.
Дякуємо, шановний пане прем'єр-міністре. Мені зараз дуже приємно запросити до слова його високоповажність пана Олександра Стуба, президента Фінляндської Республіки. Підтримка Фінляндії є дуже цілеспрямованою та ефективною. Дякуємо вашій країні за послідовну і непохитну позицію. Ви добре знаєте, що означає жити поруч з Росією. Будь ласка.
Thank you very much. Volodymyr, given that I'm sitting here next to you, this is more of a personal address than anything else. You see, I think we in Finland understand exactly what you're going through. We have 1,340 kilometers of border with Russia. In November 1939, Russia attacked us, completely unprovoked. We fought 2 existential wars against Russia. The first one was the Winter War. It lasted only 105 days, and we were able to hold the line. The second one was the War of Continuation, which lasted pretty much 1,100 days. And that's what you've been going through right now. And essentially, for me, this war is about the existence of nationhood in Ukraine. And that nationhood is based on a triangle. And that triangle is something that we thought would be respected ever since the end of World War II. And that is independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. Now, in World War II, Finland had to accept a peace with Stalin. And I'm sure we're going to have to accept a peace with Putin. But the peace that we accepted had only one out of the 3 statehood principles in it: independence. We were the only country bordering the Soviet Union that was able to retain our true independence. But we lost our sovereignty. You know, we couldn't decide the clubs we wanted to join. We were able to join the EU only when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1995. And we lost 10% of our territory, including the areas where my grandparents were born and where my father was born. Now, the only reason I'm saying this is that the support that you will see from the Finnish public, and I think from all around this table, is the support of identity and historical experience. Now, my big point is that there seems to be some misunderstanding about what is going on here. Russia obviously started this war, but remember that it started this acquisition of territory and spheres of interest already in 2008 by attacking Georgia, and then in 2014 by annexing the Crimean Peninsula. And then at the end of the day, we are now here to commemorate the 3rd anniversary of the beginning of the full-scale war, but the war has been going on for pretty much 11 years, ever since 2014. And a lot of people don't understand that this is not only about Ukraine, but this is also about Europe. This is also about the United States. This is also about international law. And at the end of the day, it's about the world order. So if we now allow Russia to do what it wants to do, in other words, stop the existence of a Ukrainian state, then it's not only Ukraine that has lost, it's Europe that's lost, it's the West that has lost, and also the United States that has lost. And for those who doubt about this, let me say one thing very clearly. You cannot trust Putin. You cannot make a deal with Putin because that means basically a deal also with China. I also say that for those who doubt, the only way in which Ukraine is going to fully win this war is that we continue the support that we have given you from the beginning. And I also say that if Russia gets what it wants now, trust me, it's not going to stop with Ukraine. We know that Putin will continue because his mind is one of imperialism and spheres of interest. So self-evidently, Finland will continue to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. We're the 5th biggest donor, GDP per capita. Let me finish off, however, by saying that I think in the past 2 weeks, we've been sort of a little bit lost. A new American administration has come in, and we have heard conflicting messages. I believe that we need to take the initiative back. And by that I mean to say that there needs to be something concrete on the proposal, on the table. So let me propose today something that I've spoken with you about and with many around the table. It's not a peace plan, but it's a sketch of a process. And that process, in my mind, goes very simply in 3 phases. The first phase is before the actual ceasefire. This is the phase when we put maximum pressure on Russia, including sanctions, including using the frozen assets, and of course, including continuing the military support for Ukraine. This is also the time when I think European leaders need seriously talk about security arrangements. And of course, the lead comes from Ukraine. You have the biggest land force and most experienced land force in Europe. But there needs to be support from Europe, and the backstop needs to come from the United States. All of this needs to be settled before a ceasefire is brokered, whether that's Easter or whenever, we don't know. The second phase is the ceasefire phase. And the ceasefire basically means that there's a contact line, probably monitoring thereof, but it also means that 2 things are put into place. First is a negotiation on the actual agenda and modalities of the peace process, because there is no peace process, there is no agenda, there are no modalities. And the second one is, of course, confidence-building measures, which were mentioned here a little bit earlier, exchange of prisoners, returning the kidnapped children, etc., etc. This is the second phase. Then only begins the third phase, and we're far, far, far from it. And that is the actual peace process. That's when there is conversation about territory, that's when there is conversation about reconstruction, and that's when there is conversation about unraveling the sanctions. Having said all of that, very conditional by the way, having said all of that, I think we need to make clear to the Russians and everyone else that there are a few things that are completely off the table in these negotiations. One is EU membership. It is not Russia who decides on EU membership. It is the European Union who does that. 2 is NATO. It is not Russia that decides on NATO membership. It is the alliance itself. 3 is Ukrainian defense. It is not Russia that decides on what Ukraine has by its border, when, where, and how. And 4, European security arrangements or order. It's not Russia that decides on that. We already have a European security order and should stick to it. So those are off the table. And let me just finish off, because I do think this is such an important day, and I was watching all the colleagues on Maidan Square and the rest of it. But I do think this is a day when we have to honor the fallen Ukrainian heroes. I also believe that this is a day where we have to face the fact that Putin has lost this war, in a sense that we will see a European Ukraine, we will see eventually Ukraine in NATO, we've seen a unified European Union, and hopefully a stronger transatlantic alliance in the long run. And on a day like this, I think it's time to pave the way for a plan for Ukrainian victory. Slava Ukraini.
Дякуємо, пане президенте. А зараз я радий запросити до виступу його високоповажність пана Діка Схоофа, прем'єр-міністра Королівства Нідерланди. Нідерланди є важливим партнером України Ваше лідерство поза конкуренцією, особливо важливим є ваш внесок у підвищення безпеки нашого неба. Прошу, пане прем'єр-міністре.
Thank you. Mr. President, dear Volodymyr, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. One of my first international trips after I became Prime Minister of the Netherlands last summer was to Zaporizhzhia, was to Ukraine. It was an experience I will never forget. I spoke to veterans, I visited an underground school, and I saw with my own eyes the devastating impact of war. But what struck me above all was the bravery and the resilience of the Ukraine armed forces and the Ukrainian people. For 3 years now, you have resisted the most brutal and fierce attacks by the Russian aggressor. Fighting for freedom, fighting for independence, fighting for the right to shape your own future. The government and people of the Netherlands admire you greatly for that. The purpose of that first visit was very clear: to reaffirm that the Netherlands stand with Ukraine and that we will continue to do so. But today, I can only repeat that message, also on behalf of His Majesty the King. Ukraine can count on our unwavering military, financial, and political support, now and after the war, when justice must be done and Ukraine must recover. So it's good to see so many of you today. It shows that support for Ukraine remains strong and widespread. Today marks the start of the 4th year of the terrible war. Let us hope that it also marks the beginning of the end. In the past few turbulent weeks, we have been face to face with history. None of us can predict what will happen over the next few weeks and months. But whatever that may be, for the Netherlands, there can only be one outcome. And that is a just and lasting peace, both for Ukraine and for Europe. That means a peace that not only ends hostilities here and now, but also guarantees a safe future. That's why it's so important that Ukraine remains strong on the battlefield. Because we need peace through strength and not the enduring threat of war through weakness. And furthermore, it's crucial that your voice and our voices are heard in the negotiation process. Nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Nothing about Europe without Europe. Thank you, Volodymyr, for inviting us to this summit. Thank you all for attending and showing your support. Let's keep working together towards the best possible outcome. Thank you, and Slava Ukraine.
І мені дуже приємно запросити до слова його високоповажність пана Джастіна Трюдо, прем'єр-міністра Канади. Канада займає особливе місце в серцях українців. Позиція Канади в групі G7 з початку повномасштабного вторгнення і, зокрема, у 2025 році під час канадського головування має важливе значення для успіху нашої боротьби. Прошу, пане прем'єр-міністре.
Bonjour, mes chers amis. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to my fellow leaders for your timely and salient remarks. And above all, thank you, Volodymyr, for hosting today's summit and for your courageous leadership as the duly elected democratic leader of this great nation. Since the start of Russia's full-scale illegal war of aggression 3 years ago, you've shown remarkable personal bravery, resilience, and resolve, a defiant spirit mirrored by the unbreakable Ukrainian people. You continue to inspire me and tens of millions of my fellow citizens back home in Canada. But let us be frank, you and the Ukrainian people should never have had to endure even a single day of this unjustified, brutal war, let alone 1,096 of them, or more accurately, over 4,000 of them since Russia illegally seized Crimea back in 2014. This is not a conflict Ukraine wanted, provoked, or asked for in any way. This is a war started for one reason and one reason only: Russia's desire to erase Ukrainian history and expand their empire. Russia's actions are nothing short of a direct attack against the rules-based international order, an order established in response to the most destructive war in our collective history, a war etched in the memory of the citizens of all of our respective nations for the past 80 years. An order which, albeit imperfect, ushered in the most peaceful and prosperous era in the history of humanity. We cannot go back. We cannot return to an era where might makes right. We must do everything in our power to enable Ukraine to secure a just and lasting peace, a peace that cannot be achieved without Ukrainians at the table. That is precisely what Canada is focused on. Canada has been a steadfast, unshakable partner to Ukraine since the beginning, and that will never, ever change. Le Canada est fier du travail qu'on a accompli avec vous tous autour de cette table pour faire que la Russie paye le prix de cette invasion inhumaine, que ce soit avec des sanctions ou en offrant aux Ukrainiens de l'aide humanitaire, financière et militaire dont ils ont besoin pour se défendre et faire obstacle au régime russe. But I know, we all know, there is more work to do. That is why I am announcing Canada will be providing 25 more LAV-3 infantry fighting vehicles to Ukraine. We will be delivering 2 armored combat support vehicles which Ukrainian forces will be trained on shortly in Germany. Landing systems for F-16s were delivered just 2 months ago, and 4 F-16 flight simulators will be provided in the coming months. And that's on top of the millions of additional rounds of ammunition, components for drone cameras, and first aid kits. We're also dispersing the first installment of the $5 billion in assistance to Ukraine funded through revenues from frozen Russian assets, along with providing a grant to help Ukraine maintain its energy security in the wake of consistent, reckless attacks by Russia on Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Throughout all this, we need to keep in mind the size of the human cost of the Russian aggression for the past 3 years. Ukrainians who've lost their lives fighting courageously for their land, children taken from their families and homes and communities, which is a disgusting war crime, and violence subjected to prisoners of war taken by Russia. Implementing the Montreal Pledge to address the human costs of the war, a declaration made at the conference we co-hosted there last autumn with Norway and Ukraine, is more urgent than ever. We will continue to work with Ukrainian forces through Operation Unifier, which has already trained tens of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers. And once a just peace is secured, Canada stands at the ready to work with our partners around the world to provide Ukraine the security it needs for the peace to last, allowing it to recover, rebuild, and prosper. Regardless of the great distance separating our 2 countries, Canada knows this is a war that we cannot afford to ignore. I know the stakes. Canadians know the stakes. All of you around this table know the stakes. And most of all, Ukrainians know the stakes. This is a war of aggression on Ukraine's people, culture, identity, and very existence. But it's also a war on our way of life. It's a war on democracy, on the rule of law, on self-determination, a war on justice, and a war on truth. At this critical moment, I think of the words of the great Ukrainian poet, Taras Shevchenko, whose works have been echoed by millions of Ukrainians as a source of inspiration. You must fight on, you will triumph. God is helping, leading. At your back are justice, glory, and sacred freedom. That excerpt was proudly recited in Independence Square by Serhiy Nihoyan, the first martyr of the Revolution of Dignity, shortly before he was killed. And 11 years later, it continues to ring true. Ukrainians will triumph because Ukrainians are fighting for what is right. But they cannot and should not do it alone. It's up to all of us in this room and around the world to meet this moment as well. And we can't wait. The moment to stop this war of aggression, the moment to defend democracy, the moment to stand for our shared values is now. So let us seize it. Merci beaucoup, mes amis. Slava Ukraini.
Дякуємо, шановний пане прем'єр-міністре. А зараз я хотів би передати слово його високоповажності пану Реджепу Таїпу Ердогану, президенту Турецької Республіки. Туреччина залишається непохитним і впливовим прихильником українського суверенітету, територіальної цілісності. Ми це надзвичайно цінуємо.
Değerli dostum Sayın Zelenskiy, kıymetli Ukraynalılar, sevgili Kırım Türk'ü soydaşlarımız, saygıdeğer katılımcılar, sizlere en kalbi duygularımla, saygıyla selamlıyorum. Video mesaj yoluyla da olsa sizlere hitap etmekten memnuniyet duyuyorum. Savaşın 3. yılını doldurduğumuz bu acı günde ülke ve millet olarak dost Ukrayna halkının yanında olduğumuzu öncelikle ifade etmek istiyorum. Geçtiğimiz 3 sene zarfında topraklarını savunurken hayatlarını kaybeden Ukraynalılar için taziye dileklerimi iletiyor, yakınlarına başsağlığı diliyorum. Türkiye 2014 yılında Kırım'ın ilhakından bu yana uluslararası hukukun temel ilkeleri doğrultusunda Ukrayna'nın haklı davasına gereken desteği vermiştir. Bundan 3 sene önce çatışmalar başladığında savaşa karşı olduğumuzu nasıl ilan ettiysek, bugün de savaşın müzakereler vasıtasıyla sonlandırılması için her türlü gayreti göstermeye kararlıyız. Bunu yaparken Ukrayna'nın toprak bütünlüğü, egemenliği ve bağımsızlığına olan güçlü desteğimizi sürdürüyoruz. Savaş 4. yılına girerken diplomasiyi, diyaloğu ve müzakereleri temel alan yaklaşımların ivme kazandığını görmekteyiz. Bu sürecin çatışmaların sonlandırılmasının ve kalıcı barışın tesisinin başlangıcı olmasını umut ediyoruz. En başından beri savunduğumuz üzere adil ve kalıcı barışa giden yol ancak ve ancak savaşın her iki tarafının da eşit ve hakkaniyetli bir şekilde temsil edildiği bir denklemle açılabilir. Sayın Zelenskiy ile geçtiğimiz hafta Ankara'da Türkiye'nin bu önemli kavşakta sağlayabileceği katkıları ve müzakerelere ev sahipliği yapma istediğini de ele aldık. Şunu tüm samimiyetimle ifade etmek isterim. Gelecek sene savaşın değil, barışın yıl dönümünü idrak etmek için hepimize önemli sorumluluklar düşüyor. Türkiye olarak adil ve kalıcı barışın tesisi için tüm gücümüzle çalışmaya devam edeceğiz. Bu düşüncelerle 2025'in barışın inşa edileceği bir yıl olmasını canı gönülden temenni ediyorum. Birkaç gün sonra kavuşacağımız Ramazan-ı Şerif'in tüm insanlığa barış, huzur ve esenlik getirmesini Rabbimden niyaz ediyorum. Hepinize saygı ve selamlarımı gönderiyorum. Kalın sağlıcakla.
Дякуємо. І зараз я радий запросити до виступу її високоповажність пані Карін Келлер-Зутер, президента Швейцарської конфедерації. Швейцарія відіграла важливу роль у просуванні глобального бачення всеохоплюючого, справедливого та сталого миру для України та Європи. Будь ласка.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Switzerland, I would like to thank you for the invitation to this summit. Let me start by expressing my heartfelt vicinity to the Ukrainian people who have endured another terrible year of suffering and war. For the last 3 years, Switzerland has been calling on Russia to immediately cease all hostilities and withdraw its troops from the territory of Ukraine. And we reiterate this call today. With the Ukraine Peace Summit last year in Switzerland, the goal was to lay the groundwork for peace talks and revitalize existing peace efforts. We remain steadfast in our support towards a just and lasting peace. It is clear to us that a durable solution can't be achieved without Ukraine. This war has global long-term effects. Therefore, we remain committed to working closely with our partners in Europe and beyond for a peaceful future for Ukraine and the entire continent. Ukraine has become one of the most heavily mined countries. This is not only a threat to lives, but also to food security in Ukraine and in the world. Last year, Switzerland hosted the Ukraine Mine Action Conference. More than 40 countries signed the Lausanne Call for Action, committing to concrete actions towards humanitarian demining in Ukraine. Switzerland also stands with Ukraine by providing humanitarian aid and supporting reconstruction. 2 weeks ago, the Swiss Federal Council approved a country program of 1.5 billion euro for Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction over the next 4 years. Switzerland has welcomed Ukrainian refugees, providing them with protection and support. Excellencies, in 2026, Switzerland will chair the OSCE. We will continue to work with all of you to contribute to peace and security in Europe. On this day, our thoughts are with all those who have suffered and continue to endure hardship due to this war. Let me reaffirm Switzerland's commitment to supporting Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction efforts and to working towards a future of peace, stability and justice. Thank you.
Дуже дякуємо. А зараз я маю особливу приємність передати слово його високоповажності пану Антоніу Кошті, президенту Європейської ради. Дуже дякуємо вам за ваше особисте лідерство і непохитну підтримку.
Thank you, dear Volodymyr, people of Ukraine, dear colleagues, excellencies. 3 years ago, Russia launched a full-scale invasion in Ukraine, a Russian war of aggression that was unprovoked, unjustified, and illegal. A war that violates Ukraine's sovereignty, its territorial integrity, its international recognized borders, and the fundamental principles of international law enshrined in the United Nations Charter. My thoughts are with all Ukrainians, with all those who have lost a family member and friend, with those who are wounded. The suffering Russia has inflicted in Ukraine is cruel and unjustifiable. The presence of all of us here today is a demonstration of our solidarity with people of Ukraine and with you, President Zelenskiy. We were here with you from day one. We stand and we will stand with you side by side, shoulder to shoulder, in the war, in future peace negotiations, in the reconstruction, and as a member state of the European Union. We all want this war to end and the suffering and destruction to stop. This is why this moment is so important. Russia is a threat to the international rules-based order. Putin wants to divide us, and we show here today that our support is strong, united, and unchanged. There will be no credible and successful negotiation, no lasting peace without Ukraine and without the European Union. Only Ukraine can decide when the conditions are met to start a peace negotiation. Peace cannot be a simple ceasefire. It needs to be a durable agreement. Peace should not reward the aggression. We need to learn the message from the past, from the Budapest and Minsk agreements. Only concrete and strong security guarantees will ensure a comprehensive, just and lasting peace in Ukraine and in Europe as a whole. The European Union is ready to do whatever it takes for its security and to continue to support Ukraine. That is why I'm convening a special European Council next week on the 6th of March on supporting Ukraine and strengthening Europe's defense. Working very close with the European Commission and with Ursula, we are ready to effectively deliver on our defense capabilities and to significantly invest on it. We are ready to increase our financial and military support to Ukraine. And we are ready to build Ukraine's future within the European Union. Ukraine, you can count on us, and Slavia Ukrainia.
Дуже дякуємо. Сьогодні ми маємо честь слухати не лише промови і виступи світових лідерів, а також матимемо честь почути і наших мужніх воїнів з передової. І зараз для мене особливо приємно і почесно надати слово відважним воїнам 93-ї окремої механізованої бригади «Холодний Яр», які боронять нашу батьківщину на Покровському напрямку. Головний сержант батальйон безпілотних систем Денис Кардаш. Прошу до слова.
Вітаю всіх, слава Україні! Сьогодні до 11-ї річниці початку агресії на території України Російської Федерації і до 3-ї річниці великого наступу повномасштабної війни Росії з Україною. Хотілося б подякувати всім європейським лідерам та країнам, які нас підтримують у цій війні, йдуть разом з нами до перемоги. Зараз ми, бійці 93-ї бригади батальйону безпілотних систем Black Raven, знаходимося на бойових позиціях, виконуємо бойові завдання на найгарячіших напрямках нашої країни. Це Покровський напрямок, це напрямок Бахмутський. Наші підрозділи виконують завдання з прикриття неба, знищення ворога і підтримки нашої піхоти на всіх цих напрямках. Лише протягом останніх днів наша бригада відбила десятки атак агресора, які хотіли захопити нашу вільну Україну. Нашим батальйоном безпосередньо за ці декілька днів було знищено біля 30 єдиниць техніки та засобів ураження, які агресор кожен день застосовує в нашу сторону. І близько 50 окупантів було знищено на наших напрямках за ці 2 дні. Лише чимало, я знаю також, що чимало країн є, які нам допомагають, пройшли через такий ж самий агресію зі сторони Росії і знають, що це таке і як це відбувається. Хочу нагадати всім, хто може не до кінця розуміє, що це таке що війна, вона приходить несподівана, і ніхто до неї ніколи не готується. І це дуже погано. А чи важко нам зараз тут? Важко. Неймовірно важко. Чи хочемо, чи втомилися ми від війни? Втомилися. Так, але це битва за нашу незалежність, це битва за наших рідних, це битва за нашу сім'ю і за нашу країну і за нашу націю. Якщо ми програємо цю битву, то в нас цього всього не буде. Не буде майбутнього у наших родин і наших дітей. Хочу подякувати всім странам, які підтримують нас, всім народам, людям, які підтримують нашу боротьбу. Хочу подякувати всім волонтерам. Це українські волонтери, це наші люди, це волонтери інших стран, які допомагають сильно, допомагають і реагують дуже швидко, тому що війна йде кожен день і вона дуже жорстока. Хочу подякувати всім воїнам, які зараз захищають нашу країну. Це воїни, як українські, так і іностранні воїни, які приїхали допомогти нам стати вільними. Дякую всім. Слава Україні, слава нації і вічна пам'ять всім загиблим героям, які захищали нашу страну від російської агресії. Дякую.
Дякуємо нашим мужнім воїнам за героїзм. І зараз маю честь запросити до виступу його високоповажність пана Еді Раму, прем'єр-міністра Республіки Албанія. Цінуємо непохитну і дієву підтримку вашої країни і ваше лідерство. Дякуємо.
Thank you very much, and thank you for especially including me and Albania here. I'm aware that I am the tallest of all of you, but I represent a country that is maybe irrelevant in this state when it comes to manpower and when it comes to military power and all this. I cannot but fully agree with everything that was said, and I don't want to waste anyone's time by repeating the fundamentals that all the friends and the colleagues around the table have underlined. However, I cannot prevent myself to raise a question because it seems to me, following the whole meeting, that nothing has happened. It seems to me that this meeting is like a registration of a meeting 3 months ago, or a year ago, or 2 years ago. But I'm not sure that is the case, and I think that something important has happened, as you all know. And the question is how Ukraine will be supported efficiently, and how much we can be, all of us. But again, I apologize because I know that here it's about EU first, it's about other big countries and not about Albania, but how Europe as a continent can be efficient in protecting itself and in making the best out of something that is going on, a negotiation between Russia and the United States. And I'm not sure that just talking about increasing military support and increasing military spending, we get the whole point. But this is my humble opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. And what I just shared yesterday with Volodymyr in our conversation, I want to share with you that, in my understanding, Europe as a continent need to have a long trench of diplomacy, including Great Britain, of course, Turkey, European Union, by no doubt, and have a position. Have a position because I'm afraid that it will be unsustainable with the public opinions, especially in the western side of the continent, to continue and just say what we are saying here, but in the meantime, looking US and Russia striking a deal and Ukraine being cut out or being imposed something that may be totally unjust. So we have been for a long time in the American autopilot. Now the autopilot seemingly is off. Nobody knows for how long. And I believe that it's time to have a deeper reflection than just what we will do in terms of military support or military spending. Because it for sure is very necessary, but might not be enough. And so with all this being said, I repeat, no doubt that we are fully behind Ukraine, no doubt that we are fully behind any decision the grown-ups in this space will make, but you know, some doubts about the fact that here we are talking just about half of the story and not of the other half, and we are dealing just about half of the problem, which is the military side, and not the other half, which is the politics and the diplomacy of it, has to be shared. And I apologize again. I'm very much aware that you know, the relevance of my country is not as big as to change anything, but just some food for thought, because I'm afraid that if this thing will go on like this, sooner more than later, especially the Western countries will have to face public opinions that may bring things to a total collapse of the democratic forces. Thank you.
Дуже дякуємо. І зараз я радий запросити до виступу його високоповажність пана Сігеру Ісібу, прем'єр-міністра Японії. Японія – друг і союзник. Японія дуже добре розуміє, що Росія насправді ніколи не закінчує своєї війни. 2025 рік – це час, коли ми визнаємо, що безпека європейського та індотихоокеанського регіонів нероздільні і діємо відповідно. Прошу, пане прем'єр-міністре.
I am Ishiba Shigeru, the Prime Minister of Japan. Today marks 3 years since the start of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. We strongly condemn the ongoing Russian attacks and once again express our admiration for the courage and resilience of the Ukrainian people who are standing up against the aggression. Furthermore, it is very meaningful that discussions on supporting Ukraine are being held at today's meeting, and I would like to pay my utmost respect for Ukraine's initiative in hosting this meeting. Russia's aggression against Ukraine is an outrageous act that shakes the very foundation of the international order. Such unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force must not be tolerated anywhere in the world. With this in mind, Japan has strongly provided support to Ukraine and has imposed sanctions on Russia since the beginning of the aggression.
Currently, various diplomatic efforts are ongoing to achieve peace. We hope that these efforts will lead to an end to the prolonged combat and help achieve a breakthrough in this difficult situation. That is my fervent expectation. Having said so, in considering how to end this aggression, the party in question, Ukraine must engage, and a just and lasting peace should materialize as soon as possible. Toward this end, we must unite and work together. Our stance of supporting Ukraine will remain steadfast. Japan continues to work with Ukraine to restore peace to the beautiful land of Ukraine. Thank you.
Дуже дякуємо. А зараз я з особливою приємністю запрошую до слова її високопані Урсулу фон дер Ляйен, її високоповажність, президентку Європейської комісії. Дякуємо за ваше особисте лідерство, за ваші одні з перших візитів в Україну і за демонстрацію справжньої підтримки і нашим людям, і нашій країні. Дякуємо.
Thank you very much, dear Volodymyr, fellow leaders, people of Ukraine. The 24th of February 2022 is a day that will live forever in infamy. And today we join you in commemoration of the fallen hero of Ukraine and those who are still fighting at the front line, as we have just heard. A peaceful nation was invaded with no reason except Putin's imperial obsession. But we believe in a free and a sovereign Ukraine on the path towards the European Union, and we join you in shaping this future together. The war in Ukraine remains the most central and consequential crisis for Europe's future. Putin is trying harder than ever to win the war on the ground. His goal remains Ukraine's capitulation, and we know what could happen next, because it has already happened before. It is not only the destiny of Ukraine that is at stake, it is Europe's destiny that is at stake. So our first priority remains to empower Ukraine's resistance. And so far, the European Union and the member states have supported Ukraine to the tune of 135 billion euros. That is more than anybody else. Thanks to our Ukraine facility and the G7 loan, we have closed Ukraine's budgetary gap for the entire year of 2025. Now, in parallel, we must speed up the immediate delivery of weapons and ammunition, and this will be at the heart of our work in the coming weeks. Today, I'm here with the whole College of Commissioners of the European Commission to mark our wholeheartedly support for Ukraine. A free and sovereign Ukraine is not only in the European interest, but it is in the interest of the whole world, because the autocrats around the world are watching very carefully whether there's any impunity if you violate international borders or invade your neighbor, or if there is true deterrence. This is not only paramount for Europe, it is also important for Asia, for Africa, and for both sides of the Atlantic. An investment in Ukraine's sovereignty is an investment in the prevention of future wars. And there is more in for Europe and the world. Ukraine has a highly innovative and thriving defense industry. This should never fuel the arsenals of an aggressive power, but it should strengthen the resilience of a European Union with Ukraine as its member that is taking on more responsibility for its own security. Ukraine has a lively startup scene with a lot of experience in the rising sectors like artificial intelligence and drones. The can-do attitude and the entrepreneurial spirit of young and dynamic Ukrainian companies can provide important impulses to Europe's competitiveness. Dear Volodymyr, Europe is here to strengthen Ukraine in this critical moment. I can announce that a new €3.5 billion payment for Ukraine will arrive already in March. Second, as President Costa just has announced, there will be a special European Council, and I will present at this special European Council a comprehensive plan for defense investment, for scaling up our European arms production and defense capabilities, but also for investment in Ukraine's defense industry, scaling up your arms production, your defense capabilities. So this will be a plan for the European Union and for Ukraine. And then there's a third point I want to speak about. That is energy. For 3 years, Russia has sought to plunge Ukraine into darkness by relentlessly targeting the energy infrastructure. Therefore, the Commission has prepared an ambitious package on energy security. The aim is to ensure a resilient, a secure, competitive energy system for Ukraine. Together, we have managed during this winter already to provide 1.8 gigawatt. But now we will fully integrate Ukraine's and Moldova's electricity market in our own electricity market by the end of next year. And we will seize the full potential of Ukraine's vast gas storages, of which 80% are located closer to the EU member states. And this will generate income for Ukraine. And we will accelerate investment in Ukraine's renewable energy. All these efforts will result in greater energy security for both the European Union and Ukraine. Finally, no one wants more peace than the Ukrainian people. But they want a just and a lasting peace. And this only comes through strength. And this is why we strengthen your economy. This is why we increase the resilience of your energy sector. This is why we will continue training and equipping your troops. Think of the importance of artillery ammunition, for example. This is why we have to provide security guarantees backed by the United States. This is why today we are adopting the 16th package of sanctions. We will increase punitive sanctions against Russia until they demonstrate true willingness to achieve a lasting peace agreement. We stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes. I cannot wait for the moment, after having listened also to your soldier at the front line, till we start to reconstruct Ukraine again, Ukraine as a member of the European Union. Slava Ukraini. Thank you so much.
Дуже дякуємо. А зараз маю честь надати слово її високоповажності пані Роберті Мецолі, президентці Європейського парламенту. Роль Європейського парламенту надзвичайно важлива і відіграє важливу роль у боротьбі з російською агресією.
Thank you very much, dear Volodymyr, dear colleagues, dear friends. We were with Ukraine on that day, 3 years ago. We are with Ukraine today, and we will be with you tomorrow. What matters now, however, is not just what we say. It is what we do. The coming days and weeks will shape our future, not through words, but through the actions we take right here in Europe. Peace without liberty is not peace. Europe knows this. We will always seek peace, but it must be just, it must be real, and it must be dignified. And it must be based on the principle of nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Because the concept of might is right will not define the new world order. It cannot. For 3 years, Europe has stood with you, and let me be clear, we will not waver. I will never forget those moments in Kiev at the start of the invasion when the world saw you all stand up. The European Parliament has been united from day one. And together with President von der Leyen and President Costa, we will speak with one voice, because we understand that together we are strongest. But now we must do more. Ukraine must be in a position of strength, because that is the only path to real peace and liberty. That means Europe must step up without delay, militarily, financially, as we've just heard, and diplomatically. We must move forward with using frozen Russian assets, tightening sanctions, and increasing pressure. And we must get serious about our own defense, and fast. Let's be clear, Ukraine's fight is Europe's fight. This is not just an attack on Ukraine. It is an attack on democracy, on our way of life, on everything we stand for. The Ukrainians on the front lines are holding the line for all of us. So as Ukraine enters the 4th year of this war, we must stay the course. We must cut through the noise. We must keep our eyes on our shared objective, freedom for Ukraine and lasting peace for all of Europe and the world. Slava Ukraini!
Дуже дякуємо. І зараз я радий надати слово її високоповажності пані Майі Санду, президентці Республіки Молдова. Молдова є критично важливим партнером у забезпеченні безпеки та стабільності регіону. Будь ласка.
Thank you. Dear President Zelensky, ladies and gentlemen, I remember that morning 3 years ago, 4 a.m., I read the news in horror. I got up, went to the office, and from there, I heard the bombs exploding. Odessa, or maybe Vinnytsia. At that moment, we didn't know where the next bomb would fall. But we know this now. Ukraine's courage has kept Moldova safe and at peace. The bravery and sacrifice of the Ukrainian people shielded us from war. We will always be grateful. We will never forget. 3 years on, Russia's brutal, criminal war continues. The Kremlin's aggression has brought suffering and devastation on a scale Europe has not seen since World War II. Just yesterday, Ukraine endured the largest drone attack since the start of the war. Russia is not looking for peace, yet the world speaks of peace. But peace must be just, lasting, and real. A flawed peace, one that ignores Ukraine's security or sidelines Europe, will not end the threat. It will only delay it. A fake peace, one that lets Putin regroup, rearm, and invade again, is not peace. That is why we must stand together. Russia's goal is division between allies, between countries, within societies. Instead, we must stand united. Security guarantees are key to making sure history does not repeat itself, that Putin can never deceive the world again, that Russia will no longer bring death to other nations. The world needs real security guarantees, clear, strong, and enforceable. Moldova supports these efforts. We stand with Ukraine in securing concrete guarantees that will ensure lasting peace. We support measures that strengthen Ukraine's security and prevent future aggression. This is not just about Ukraine. It is about all of us. And let me be clear, Putin would not stop at Ukraine. That is why our response must be firm, our support unwavering, because Ukraine is not just fighting for itself, it is fighting for all of us. And while Ukraine stands, Moldova stands, Europe stands. Let us make sure we're standing up, not standing by. Moldova stands with Ukraine. Moldova stands with freedom. And together, we will spare no effort for real peace to prevail. Slava Ukraini!
Дякуємо, пані президент. А тепер з особливою приємністю я надаю слово її високоповажності пані Мете Фредеріксен, прем'єр-міністру Данії. Данія встановлює високі стандарти щодо послідовності та інноваційності підтримки України. Данська модель підтримки військово-промислового комплексу України є ініціативою, яка має стратегічне значення та довготривалий ефект для нашої боротьби. Ми потребуємо лідерства Данії. Прошу.
Those who say that we are in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. So it was said many years ago, and dear friends, today gathered here in Kiev, we don't have to look very far to see the heroes of our time. Dear Volodymyr, you and your countrymen have been fighting now for 3 long years, a full-scale war of aggression started by Russia. You have defended not only your own country, but all of Europe. And I believe that none of us present in this room are able to put into words how grateful we are. But then we can show it in action. And therefore, I have 3 key messages today. Firstly, I strongly urge every European country to increase support for Ukraine. Not tomorrow, but today. Remove all self-imposed red lines, scale up military and financial assistance, and support production directly in Ukraine. Conditions for peace are to be set through strength, and I think that is the single most important task for Europe right now. Secondly, a ceasefire without a sustainable peace will cause a lot of danger to all of us. It will give Russia room to rebuild and to rearm and to relaunch an attack on Ukraine or another European country. I have never believed that this war is primarily about Ukraine. You are paying the price for it, but this war is about Russia. It's about the imperial dreams, and therefore I find it very difficult to trust Putin and to trust Russia. And it goes without saying that nothing should be negotiated without Ukraine, not only at the table, but in the center of the table, of course. Thirdly, we need to ensure Ukraine has a real and strong security guarantee. NATO membership is, of course, the strongest security guarantee. It is the easiest way forward, it's the cheapest way forward. I know that some allies are against this, and therefore I ask the question, if we cannot give you membership of NATO, and I think it's the only way forward, then we have to find another way to provide Ukraine with a clear, long-term security guarantee. Let me just conclude by saying that the best things about heroes is that they always win at the end. And if they aren't winning, then it's not the end. I said to you 3 years ago that Denmark stands with you all the way, and we will never go away from that point of view. We have to stand with Ukraine, and we have to stand with our continent. Therefore, I think we have to scale up as Europeans. We have to speed up to be able to protect ourselves and deter when it comes to Russia. And 3% will not be enough. It's simply not enough. My guess is that we have a couple of months to take all necessary decisions. Otherwise, we'll be too late. And being too late cannot be the conclusion. So it's time to stand up for Ukraine, and it's time to stand up for Europe. Slava Ukraini.
Дуже дякуємо. Тепер я запрошую до виступу її високоповажність пані Міріам Спітері де Боно, президентку Республіки Мальта. Ми вдячні вам за вашу підтримку.
Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues. Today, we gather to mark 3 years since Russia launched its war of aggression against Ukraine, in violation of international law and the principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter. On this occasion, we remember the countless civilians affected, especially the most vulnerable, women, children, and the elderly. Since then, Ukraine has stood firm, demonstrating remarkable courage and resilience in the face of aggression. The time has come for this war to stop, and for the international community to stand firm in defending the principles of the United Nations Charter. It is time for Europe, the United States, Ukraine, and also Russia itself to work together to achieve a just and lasting peace. From the outset, Malta has been unequivocal. Ukraine's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders must be withheld. We remain steadfast in this commitment. Malta has consistently demonstrated its unwavering support for the efforts shown by different partners to assist Ukraine. The EU and its member states have played a huge part, including through the provision of vital humanitarian assistance to displaced persons, the reconstruction of critical infrastructures, sanctions, and the provision of non-lethal military assistance through the European Peace Facility. Throughout our tenure as an elected member of the UN Security Council, and in our role as chair of the OSCE in 2024, Malta has maintained a firm and principled stance on the importance of upholding Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. As developments unfold, we must be clear in our strategy, firm in our demands, and unwavering in our continued support for Ukraine. Malta will continue to engage constructively in initiatives to put Ukraine in a position of strength and at the same time reinforce Europe's own resilience against external threats. While respecting our constitutional commitment to neutrality, Malta shall continue with its advocacy for the full respect of international law and the active pursuit of peace, security, and social progress. In the last few months, different initiatives have been put on the table. Malta has been strong in underlining that it stands ready to support any peace process that is grounded in the principles of the UN Charter. It is imperative that this peace process has the input of all the key players. Europe must play a central role, as the outcome of the discussions will shape the future of our continent and our collective security. Furthermore, it is inconceivable that Ukraine be sidelined and left out of the equation. History has shown that appeasement does not work. A lasting peace cannot be imposed. Europe and the United States share a strategic interest in securing peace. It is key that Europe and the US remain united and stand steadfast in ensuring that no country succeeds in redrawing borders through coercion and the use of force. To our Ukrainian friends, you know better than anyone else that the way ahead is not easy. As you look to Europe for leadership, security, and ultimately EU membership, know that we are ready to answer your call. Let there be no doubt, Ukraine, you are not alone. Malta will continue to stand by you, shoulder to shoulder, in defense of your independence, your sovereignty, and your territorial integrity, according to the tenets of international law. Thank you all.
Дуже дякуємо і маю честь надати слово його високоповажності пану Ульфу Крістерсону, прем'єр-міністру Королівства Швеція. Швеція є нашим надійним партнером, є нашим найближчим союзником. Прошу, пане прем'єр-міністр.
Thank you so much, and dear Volodymyr, dear friends, we're all honored to be here in Kyiv on this very special day. What you Ukrainians have achieved in the last 3 years is actually astonishing. You have withstood an all-out attack by Europe's biggest army. You have taken huge strides towards membership in the European Union. Your institutions have continued to deliver for your citizens despite the war, and your economy keeps creating employment and growth, and not least innovation. All this despite Russia's daily attacks on your people, your energy supply, your infrastructure. Ukraine has truly become a symbol for resilience around the world, This is simply remarkable. Throughout these 3 devastating years, you have also had friends, not only here in Europe. Throughout the world, countries are demonstrating their opposition to Russia's aggression, its atrocities against your people, its attempts to destroy your economy, because they know that if Russia and Russia's crimes against Ukraine go unpunished, then the world will become dangerous for all of us. Throughout these 1,096 days, if I'm counting correctly, Ukraine has taken on an outsized part of the burden for Europe's security. This we need to acknowledge as we pay our deepest respect to all the people, civilians and military, that have been killed. As the US administration now takes initiatives, we may be entering a new and decisive phase. Europe and our partners now need to step up, as Mette said, our own efforts in support of Ukraine. European countries are taking on this task, and Sweden will assume our full share of it. First, we will further increase our military aid to Ukraine. Earlier this month, we announced our largest military support package so far, and today I can announce that we will allocate another 100 million euros for Ukraine's air defenses. We are already working on our next military support package. Second, we are working to further raise the cost of aggression for Russia and its enablers. We are making efforts to limit Russia's revenues from oil export and to introduce new sanctions. And finally, third, we have made important progress on a special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. Russia must be held accountable for its illegal war. At this uncertain time, Sweden's task and the task of all your partners is to support Ukraine towards a just and lasting peace. Slava Ukraini. Thank you.
Дуже дякуємо. Тепер я надаю слово його високоповажності пану Іліє Боложану, виконуючому обов'язки президента Румунії. Румунія справді є чудовим партнером і послідовним прихильником України. Прошу.
Domnule președinte Zelenskiy, doamnelor și domnilor, se împlinesc astăzi 3 ani de la lansarea invaziei Rusiei împotriva Ucrainei și în curând se vor împlini 11 ani de când Ucraina își apără în mod curajos libertatea, independența și teritoriul. Folosesc acest prilej pentru a sublinia respectul nostru pentru curajosul popor ucrainean care luptă cu eroism și sacrificii enorme împotriva agresiunii ruse. Gândurile mele se îndreaptă spre cei care au avut de suferit de pe urma războiului, spre cei care și-au pierdut membrii familiilor, spre cei răniți, spre cei care nu mai au locuințe și spre cei refugiați. Securitatea Ucrainei este esențială atât pentru România, cât și pentru întreg continentul european. În aceste momente de cumpănă, în care se discută despre eforturile de pace, trebuie să continuăm sprijinul pentru Ucraina, nu numai acum, ci și în etapele care vor urma în procesul de pace și cel de reconstrucție. România a fost de la început alături de Ucraina.
By Ukraine from the very beginning, we have consistently supported it and we will continue to do so in the future. It is in our interests all to share this goal, which is also the goal of the US, to end this war, which has been lasting for too long and has destroyed too many lives. At the same time, it is necessary for Ukraine and the European Union to be involved in all peace negotiations. Romania stands ready to coordinate with all partners, European, American, and allies, to help find a way to a just and lasting peace. it is obvious that we must increase our investments in defense in order to strengthen our security, to have a plan and coordination for defense and deterrence. The solidarity of Ukraine's friends remains essential, and our support matters now when the fate of peace is at stake. The success of these efforts will only be proved when Ukraine has become stable and prosperous again and beneficiary of an arrangement of solid security guarantees. Thank you.
Дуже дякуємо. Зараз я надаю слово його високоповажності пану Олександру Шаленбергу, федеральному канцлеру Австрійської Республіки. Австрія яскраво демонструє, що бути нейтральною країною не значить бути байдужою по відношенню до зла. Будь ласка.
Dear colleagues, dear Volodymyr, dear Andrei, you're absolutely right. Being neutral doesn't prevent Austria to having a very clear stance on this issue. Today, we sadly mark 3 years since Russia launched an unprovoked, brutal and illegal war of aggression against Ukraine. For 3 years now, we have had to witness, day in, day out, how Russia brought about tremendous destruction, unspeakable suffering and immense despair to Ukraine and its brave people. Dear colleagues, the Ukrainian people have been defending with immense courage and sacrifice not only their own way of living and their aspirations for the future, but also, and I believe we all agree on that, our common values, our common principles, our common freedoms. And yes, we share a common responsibility for the security, for the freedom and prosperity of our European continent, including Ukraine. And we have to do this with self-confidence and calmness and firmness. It is clear this brutal war must stop. The earlier, the better. And like any war, it has to end at the negotiating table, with all parties concerned sitting at the table. But it must not end under any circumstances, and I don't believe it will, as an imposed peace. We want, I believe we all share the same view, a comprehensive, a just, a lasting peace based on international law. A peace that guarantees the interest of Ukraine and our own. We will continue to work with our global partners in achieving this important objective. But one thing has to be crystal clear. Negotiations on Ukraine must include Ukraine, just as talks on the European security must include all concerned parties in Europe. We will continue, as Austria, to support all serious efforts towards a comprehensive, just and lasting peace in Ukraine. In our capacity as host as one of the UN headquarters and seat of the OSCE, we also stand ready to provide a venue and to facilitate discussions if needed. Since day one, dear colleagues, Austria has stood in full solidarity with Ukraine and its people and has been providing extensive humanitarian, financial, and diplomatic support. In addition to our contribution in the framework of the European Union, the Austrian government has so far provided almost 300 million euros in bilateral assistance. Furthermore, Austrian Länder, municipalities, businesses, and the civil society have also shown enormous support and generosity vis-à-vis the people of Ukraine. And I can assure you, we will continue to do so. Thank you very much.
Дякуємо. Маю честь запросити до виступу його високоповажність пана Педро Санчеса, голову уряду Королівства Іспанії. Ми вдячні за вашу активну роль у підтримці України.
Thank you, dear Volodymyr, dear friends. Since the 24th of February of 2022, already 3 years ago, we have witnessed a systematic violation of the most basic principles of humanity here in Ukraine. The war crimes committed by Putin's regime cannot go unpunished. Spain condemns once again with the utmost resolve this merciless war started by Putin unrational and unjust war that has caused immense suffering, pain and despair to our Ukrainian brothers and sisters. The Spanish people admire the courage with which Ukrainians are defending freedom and democracy, an example of dignity and resistance against Putin's brutal aggression. At these critical times, let me highlight three messages. The first one is that Spain is committed to the full sovereignty of Ukraine. All Ukraine can decide its future. Spain welcomes all efforts to work towards peace, but peace must be fair, sustainable, and comprehensive. For peace to be just, Ukraine needs to sit at the negotiation table. For peace to be sustainable, Europe has to participate in it. For peace to be comprehensive, it cannot be a mere ceasefire. Second, we will continue supporting as long as it takes. We will not let you down when you need us the most. Spain will continue to provide military support and equipment with even more determination than what we have done in the past. In this regard, I'm proud to announce a new military assistance package for Ukraine worth 1 billion euros in 2025. We will also work hand in hand with Ukraine in its reconstruction, creating the necessary structure to boost the process and encouraging Spanish companies to actively engage in plans and projects. We must also address the needs of the Ukrainian diaspora. That is why I'm also happy to share that Spain and Ukraine will establish a Ukrainian hub, Casa Ucrania, in the province of Alicante. And third, we must ensure that Ukraine joins the European Union as soon as we can. Whatever happens in the coming months, Ukrainians' accession to the European Union is the most important victory for the Ukrainian people. Ukraine's hope is in Europe, but Europe's hope is also in Ukraine. You are giving us hope by defending the values and ideas of freedom for which many Europeans gave their lives in the past. Allow me to conclude precisely with this idea of hope. Difficult months lie ahead, but I am convinced that at the end of this terrible period, freedom and democracy will prevail over violence and authoritarianism. The Ukrainian people can count on Spain. Rest assured, we will be with you as long as it takes and as much as you need. Slava Ukraini, viva Europa.
Дуже дякуємо. І тепер я запрошую до виступу його високоповажність пана Барта де Вевера, прем'єр-міністра Бельгії. Бельгія є другим і партнером, який відіграє надзвичайно важливу роль у підтримці зростаючого флоту F-16 України. Ми цінуємо це. Будь ласка.
Dear President Zelenskiy, вітаю народ України. Я вжану юящих солдатів. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by saluting the bravery of Ukraine in resisting criminal Russian aggression since 3 years. We must see the Russian regime for what it is. Its total disregard for international law, its horrifying attacks against civilians, and its attempts to erase Ukrainian culture have made it perfectly clear that to ensure the protection of our countries and the European continent, we must not appease, but deter Russia. Support to Ukraine remains a key part of this endeavor. Recently, talk of negotiations towards a deal to settle the war has accelerated, but also stunned the alliance of those who, from the start, have supported Ukraine in its defense against a ruthless Russian aggressor. Stunned because it does not seem a given that Ukraine or the EU will have much of a voice in the proceedings. A peace agreement that does not take into consideration the valid interests and demands of the victims of aggression and their allies and neighbors has no chance to hold. Belgium cannot accept that decisions on the future of Ukraine and the security and stability of the European continent are taken without the participation of Ukraine and its European allies. Our priority now is to come to a coordinated European position to claim a seat at the table in view of a just, sustainable and comprehensive peace. As a founding member of the European Union, we will always work towards a united, strong, prosperous and above all, peaceful Europe. And Ukraine belongs within this Europe. Meanwhile, Ukraine will continue to be able to count on Belgian assistance as specified in the Belgian-Ukrainian bilateral security agreement that was signed last year. This includes the delivery of F-16 fighter jets, the implementation of the 4-year reconstruction program by our development agency, and support to Ukraine's Euro-Atlantic integration. I would like to support all speakers that have pleaded today to do more as European allies of Ukraine as quickly as possible. Exactly 60 years ago, the great President Ronald Reagan spoke about peace through strength in his famous speech, A Time for Choosing. He said, "You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay." A world in which borders can be forcibly withdrawn will be less safe, less prosperous and less just. We've had ample opportunity to learn this valuable lesson in the past. Slava Ukraini. I thank you.
Дуже дякую. Тепер я радий запросити його високоповажність пана Росена Желязкова, прем'єр-міністра Республіка Болгарія. Ми вдячні Болгарії за всю надану підтримку і допомогу. Будь ласка.
Шановний президенте Зеленський, шановні українські колеги, dear colleagues, 3 years ago, Russia launched a war of aggression against Ukraine, a war which is a direct assault against the peace and stability in Europe and the world, against the UN Charter and the principles of international law. Today, as we mark this dreadful anniversary, we gather to reflect on the struggle of the Ukrainian people and also to reaffirm our collective commitment to peace, sovereignty, justice and the primacy of international law. The Ukrainian people have been living in suffering and destruction for more than 1,000 days now. Critical civilian infrastructure such as nuclear plants and dams have been damaged by military actions in complete disregard of the potential consequences for the environment and the civilian population far beyond the front lines. Ukraine has bravely held its ground, but the human cost of the war has been staggering. Tens of thousands of civilians, including children, have been killed or wounded. Millions have been forced to flee their homes seeking safety and refugee in neighboring countries and beyond. Forceful displacement, illegal abduction and deportation, even of children, have been the terrible experience of thousands of innocent Ukrainians. Ladies and gentlemen, there must be no negotiations on peace in Ukraine without Ukraine and the European Union. Ukraine must be given credible and robust security guarantees which are indispensable to any comprehensive, just and lasting peace on our continent. In the meantime, while Russia's war still rages on, we must continue our comprehensive support to Ukraine. Peace through strength is the viable strategy to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position ahead of any peace talks. Dear friends, Bulgaria reiterates its support for Ukrainians' independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. From the very beginning of the war, Bulgaria has been providing military, financial, political, and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine as part of the international support efforts. We will continue to do so as long as we can and to do the best of our abilities. As a member of European Union and NATO, Bulgaria reaffirms its commitment to further supporting Ukraine. Ukraine's future lies within the European family and the transatlantic community. The Ukrainian people must be given an opportunity to rebuild a strong, resilient and democratic Ukraine. Only through unity and resolve can we make sure that the sacrifices made over the past 3 years are not in vain and will lead to a brighter, more secure future for Ukraine and for all of Europe and the world. Slava Ukraini! Thank you.
Дуже дякуємо. А зараз з великим задоволенням прошу взяти слово його високоповажність пана Кіра Стармера, прем'єр-міністра Сполученого Королівства Великої Британії та Північної Ірландії. Ваше лідерство абсолютно безпрецедентне. Прошу до слова.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, let me start with Volodymyr and say on this day of all days, I want to pay tribute to your leadership, Volodymyr. And friends, it is right that we mark this grim anniversary together. For 3 years, we have been united in opposition to Russia's barbaric invasion. And for 3 years, we've been full of admiration for the incredible response of the Ukrainian people. Their voices must be at the heart of the drive for peace. And I want to be clear that I hear them. I think of the soldiers and the civilians that I met in Kyiv just a few weeks ago in the ICU, the burns unit, the witnesses to the horror of Bucha, the school children I met living under constant bombardment, the soldiers training in the UK bound for the front line. Their voices echo in my ears. They inform decisions that I take and the peace that I believe that we must see. So I have a very simple, clear message today. The UK is with you today and every day. From His Majesty the King to the NHS workers volunteering in hospitals in Ukraine, to the communities that took Ukrainian refugees to their heart. And that's why I signed our 100-year partnership with President Zelenskiy last month, because we believe in Ukraine's fight today and the country's incredible potential to thrive in the years to come. This is a time for unity. In this crucial moment, as talks begin, we must work together to shape the outcome. Russia does not hold all the cards in this war because the Ukrainians have the courage to defend their country, because Russia's economy is in trouble, and because they have now lost the best of their land forces and their Black Sea fleet in this pointless invasion. So we must increase the pressure even further to deliver an enduring peace, not just a pause in the fighting. And we can do that in 3 ways. First, by stepping up our military support to Ukraine. And the UK is doing that, providing £4.5 billion in military aid this year, more than ever before. We're doing more than ever to train Ukrainian troops, helping Ukraine to mobilize even further. And we're proud to have taken on the leadership of the Ukraine Defence Contact Group. Secondly, we must keep dialing up the economic pressure to get Putin to a point where he is ready not just to talk, but to make concessions. So today we're announcing the UK's largest packet of sanctions since the early days of the war, going after Russia's shadow fleet and going after companies in China and elsewhere who are sending military components. Later today, I will be discussing further steps with the G7, and I'm clear that the G7 should be ready to take on more risk, including the oil price cap, sanctioning Russia's oil giants, and going after the banks that are enabling the evasion of sanctions. Third, we must bring our collective strength to the peace effort. President Trump has changed the global conversation over the last few weeks, and it has created an opportunity. Now we must get the fundamentals right. If we want peace to endure, Ukraine must have a seat at the table. and any settlement must be based on a sovereign Ukraine, backed up with strong security guarantees. The UK is ready and willing to support this with troops on the ground, with other Europeans, and with the right conditions in place. And ultimately, a US backstop will be vital to deter Russia from launching another invasion in just a few years' time. So we will do everything we can to get the best outcome for Ukraine and for us all. And let me close with one of the voices I mentioned earlier, a patient called Petro from the burns unit that I visited in Kyiv. He said to me, if Ukraine fails, Europe will be next. And that is what is at stake here. That is why we will always stand with Ukraine and with our allies against this aggression and for a just and lasting peace. Slava Ukraini. Thank you.
Ще раз дякуємо вам за ваше лідерство. Ми продовжуємо включення з особливих місць нашого опору та стійкості. І зараз я маю честь передати слово пані Ользі Каменевій, лікарю, яка виконує свої обов'язки в Херсоні, місті, яке було звільнене від російської окупації. Будь ласка.
Your Excellency, Mr. President and international partners, Kherson is a city of heroes that fights for the independence of Ukraine. Every day, our city endures relentless attacks on civilian infrastructure. Yet, the people of Kherson continue to live and to fight. Today, we address you from the newly constructed underground maternity hospital, established through the initiative and support of the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskiy. In this facility, under extraordinary challenging conditions, dedicated medical
Так, у нас технічний збій. Ми можемо продовжувати? Якщо ні, то я маю особливу честь і з великим задоволенням прошу взяти слово його високоповажність пана Йонаса Гар Стере, прем'єр-міністра Королівства Норвегія. Норвегія демонструє справжнє лідерство та стратегічний підхід у підтримці України.
Thank you, Andrei, and thank you, Volodymyr. Since I believe this emission is being streamed, and if I can say a few words to the people of Ukraine. You know, I was incredibly moved by this session at the Maidan this morning. I'm a father and I'm a grandfather, and I was wandering among those flags, and I was seeing the dates of those boys corresponding to the dates of my children. And, you know, the number of flags and the number of people, I'd just like to tell the people of Ukraine that it makes a deep impression on us on this third anniversary, but there are more than 1,000 days, and the days are counting. So this human dimension of this day really makes a strong impression on me. Colleagues have made good remarks, so I will second that we continue to show our strong support to the people of Ukraine, to the basic principles that there has to be a comprehensive, just, and sustainable peace. We all agree on that, and I will reiterate it simply by joining the voices of colleagues. As for Norway, today I will announce that we will contribute €1 billion for civilian and humanitarian support. And Mr. President, I take up on your request for energy support that you mentioned to me a few days ago. So there will be a €300 million package to gas supplies, according to the request you made, and also securing financial guarantees. In fact, it's €400 million, and also support for electricity reconstruction of grid and try to build back better and smarter. We also follow a bit in the path of what Denmark has done to open a direct investment channel into your industry. So we will also put €300 million and into a specific track here with your industry, where we may have complementarity between our industries. and also a special pledge for drones, which I think will be of great importance. And also, as some of my colleagues have mentioned, in the NB8, meaning Nordic 5, Baltic 3, we have agreed to take up on your suggestion to train, fund, and help equip a brigade. So I think, leaders have agreed that we will do that now. It's a flexible concept. It will, of course, comprise of courageous Ukrainian troops, but we will train, equip, and support them. And then I'd like to say that what then lies ahead, and I'll make 3 points. First, we need to scale up, as colleagues have said. This is not the moment to pause and wait and see. We have to scale up. So I say on behalf of Norway, we have pledged the 3.5 billion euros for 2025, approximately, but we are ready to scale that up, and I will engage with you in the coming days and weeks to see how we can do that in the best way so it really corresponds most directly with your needs. Secondly, I'd like to second President Stubb on what he was saying about process, because I think this is absolutely key that we make a real reflection on what this peace process means and how Europe can add substance and momentum to that one. There is now talks between US and Russia, but I think Prime Minister Starmer said it diplomatically, we need to get the fundamentals right. And the fundamentals are not, let me put it that way, complete if it's only this dialogue in the way we see it. And I don't think, we all agree that there can be nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, but let me put it this way bluntly, Europe cannot complain its way to the table. It cannot simply raise its hand and say, here are we, include us, because I think the US president will say, what are you bringing? Why should you? And you get all this dialogue that we are experiencing over these 4 or 5 weeks. So that means that Europe really has to get there through strength, politically, financially, and militarily. And allow me, President Costa, to say that, and Ursula, that I am not EU. I see Europe as being slightly more than EU here. It is, of course, the EU 27. Perhaps not all 27, but let's say EU 27. But then there is UK.
Yeah, almost 28.
Yeah. There is UK, there is fundamentally Turkey, and Turkey is always a bit complex, but Turkey has to be in the equation. And we heard President Erdogan and your recent visit, Volodymyr, Turkey has to be there, Norway is proud to be there, Iceland is proud to be there, and we even heard President Macron said the other day that Canada is there. We are buying Canada, so we can get them back. No, but I think, this is that concept of Europe. But that concept of Europe has to have an opinion on the substance of the peace and the process of the peace. And here I think there's no time to lose. I think your convening of the meeting on the 6th of March is great. But then for this larger group, we have to come together and make it meaningful. Macron is in Washington today, Starmer in another few days, but we have to bring this together. Because if we don't, there is not a European voice, and then we are simply much weaker. So my final point here is that for us to make a contribution to security guarantees, and we have to do that, the best and fundamental security guarantee is to bolster Ukraine, that Ukraine has strong capacity from its military capacity. Then there has to be a European security guarantee with a US backstop. And I think we should not give up on that, because it should really be in a fundamental US interest to see the value of this. Because now we hear that this is a European thing, but I think there's a good case to be made by this is linked together. So there's no time to lose, really. Finally, when we saw this from the clinic here, I read and met the other day Timothy Snyder in Oslo, and he has written extensively on Ukraine, and he's using this notion to define freedom. And he is saying the Ukrainians have invented a word which is called deoccupy. I never heard that before. We are being deoccupied. So the question was, is a village, is Bucha a free city? Do they enjoy freedom just because they are deoccupied? And the answer is no. You are still under war, you are still under attack. So defending Ukraine's freedom is not only about securing the occupation, it is securing sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. That is the package of freedom. Slava Ukraini.
Дуже дякуємо вам, шановний пане прем'єр-міністре. І маю честь запросити до слова його високоповажність пана Кіріакоса Міцотакіса, прем'єр-міністра Грецької Республіки. Ми вдячні вам за політичну і практичну підтримку нашої країни.
Thank you, dear Volodymyr. Dear colleagues, today we mark the third anniversary of Russia's brutal and unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, a watershed moment that has shattered a long period of peace and stability in our continent. From the very beginning, Greece has steadfastly supported the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. We have been unwavering in our calls for the respect of international law and the United Nations Charter. And Greece has faithfully stood by Ukraine, has provided vital military but also energy assistance. It has opened up its doors to thousands of refugees who fled the horrors of war. 3 years since the invasion began, I think it is an important opportunity to remember that the human toll has been immense. There's been so much suffering, so much destruction, so many lives that have been disrupted, and it is imperative that we all work towards bringing this to an end. And your sacrifices and the sacrifices of your people, dear Volodymyr, cannot be in vain. And I think it is important to take a step back and recognize that your resilience and your courage, your personal courage, has been remarkable. Ukraine, Europe, I think the whole world yearns for a just and lasting peace settlement. Ukraine deserves a peace that is forged through strength, and a peace that will respect its independence, but primarily will ensure its security. At the same time, I think it has been a common thread of all our interventions. Only Ukraine can, should, and will decide on accepting or rejecting any peace formula. No one can make this decision for Kiev. And it must be ensured that Kiev is part of the process, and only Ukraine has the right to decide on its future. I think we have all agreed on two basic, simple principles: that a just peace cannot be confused with an unjust capitulation, nor can a temporary ceasefire be confused with a lasting peace. And we need a peace settlement with very clear security guarantees, which will act as deterrence and prevention in the future, guarantees that will be robust, that will be effective, so that any future aggression is deterred and peace is preserved. The stakes have never been higher, in particular for our European security, and we are willing to work together with the European, with our American, with our international partners towards facilitating the attainment of a lasting peace. But we in Europe also need to step up our commitment to our own collective European defense. Greece has been spending more than 3% of our GDP on defense, and the time has come for others to do the same. And after 3 years of war that have brought destruction on an unimaginable scale, we need to support this goal. We need to act with greater resolve. We must not only bring an end to the current conflict, but make sure that we forge a model for preventing such calamities in the future. The road ahead is not going to be easy. Will undoubtedly be fraught with challenges, but it's a vision that drives us forward, a future where Ukraine stands as a country in peace, a secure, democratic, independent, but also, dear Volodymyr, a European Ukraine, a nation that can look ahead with optimism and confidence. Thank you.
Дуже дякуємо. І тепер я надаю слово його високоповажності пану Міхалу Мартіну, Тішеху Ірландії. Ми вдячні вам за вашу підтримку і допомогу. Прошу.
Thank you, and I want to thank you, Volodymyr, for convening us today. And I want to pay a personal tribute to you for your courage and your dignity throughout this war. I can recall 3 years ago at the EU Council meeting when you spoke to us on the eve of the illegal and brutal invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And we were struck by your courage then. You took a decision personally to stand your ground, and to lead the resistance of the people of Ukraine. And so did the people of Ukraine, who have earned the admiration of people all over the world for their extraordinary courage and their resilience in the face of incredible odds. We think of all of those who have lost their lives in protecting their homeland and in defending their people. And we think of all the children who have been abducted, which is an appalling war crime in itself, and reminds us that there simply has to be accountability for war crimes of that magnitude and of that kind. And we will work with our colleagues in ensuring such accountability. For a small country like Ireland, the international rules-based order is ultimately the only basis for our security. And that is why the war that Ukraine has been defending its integrity and sovereignty is so important for small nations all over the world. You are protecting and fighting to uphold the principles of the United Nations Charter, and in terms of sovereignty and integrity, but also in terms of the rules-based order. And in that context, Europe has been unified, has been firm so far. And we in Ireland stand with you, and we do need to say more, we do need to spend more, and we need to do more. And Ireland will contribute more financially on all fronts and in all areas, and will strengthen our commitments on that front. I believe it's extremely important for us in the European Union to accelerate Ukraine's membership of the European Union, an important dimension to Ukraine's long-term security, and something that Ireland is very keen to push and to strongly support. Could I say also that we will continue to support sanctions, and also the whole area of frozen assets and the utilization of frozen assets for the reconstruction of Ukraine. Because those who engage in illegal and brutal invasions and who breach the very basics of international rules and sovereignty have to know that ultimately there has to be a price for the destruction that has been wrought as a result of this war, particularly the destruction of the civilian and energy infrastructure of Ukraine itself. And the next European Union summit, the emergency summit being convened on the 6th of March, will be a very important moment for concrete actions, which Ireland will strongly support, both the Commission and President Costa in the agenda that they will bring to the table on that occasion. I think it's very important also that we remember that Russia has not achieved the objectives that it set itself when it illegally invaded Ukraine 3 years ago. We need to remember that and take solace and strength from that, because the unity of the resistance has had an impact. What we must now resolve is to ensure that Russia is never rewarded for what it did 3 years ago. Thank you very much indeed.
Ще раз дуже вам дякуємо. І зараз я радий запросити до слова його високоповажність пана Крістена Міхала, прем'єр-міністра Естонської Республіки. Естонія є надзвичайно важливим союзником у нашій спільній боротьбі. Прошу.
Thank you. President Zelenskiy, dear colleagues, I'm very proud to be here on Estonia's 107th birthday. Today is the day. Standing by Ukraine to show the true meaning of friendship. Ukraine has shown the world the true meaning of resilience. In its monumental struggle against Russian aggression, Ukraine fights not just for its own freedom, but a world built on principles. A world where might does not make right, as Mette and Justin already said. Estonia will never recognize the changing of borders by force. We will always stand for your right to choose your own allies. Now is the time to do more and do it faster. We must speed up our support to Ukraine. Estonia increased its military aid to Ukraine by 25% last week. This comes on top of our commitment to allocate 0.25% of GDP annually to helping Ukraine. Together with Nordic Baltic countries, we support Ukraine by providing equipment and training to brigade-sized units. We are ready to do even more, if needed, to keep our commitment to make Ukraine stronger. We continue our work on Ukraine's reconstruction. We see Ukraine's future in EU and NATO and assist every way. It is also time to maximize pressure on Russia. We are working to ensure frozen assets are used to support Ukraine. Sanctions have already cut Russia off from the European financial and capital markets. Trade is severely limited. It is up to Europe to decide when and how we will change these measures. We, Europe, are forced to be reckoned with. I very much liked what Jonas already said, that you cannot complain yourself to the table. This comes through a push to cut Russia out of business. We fully support all the efforts of our partners to advance an ambitious aid to Ukraine and remain committed to maintaining open and constructive dialogue with the United States. Finally, a just and lasting peace requires the participation of Ukraine and Europe. Only Ukraine can decide its own terms for peace. No conditions should be imposed from the outside. No topic is off the table except one: surrender. Your fight is our fight, and your victory will be victory for European security. Slava Ukraini!
Дуже вам дякуємо, шановний пане прем'єр-міністре. А зараз я прошу взяти слово його високоповажність пана Даніеля Гріша, прем'єр-міністра князівства Ліхтенштейн. Ми вам вдячні за підтримку.
Thank you, Andrei. Dear Volodymyr, dear colleagues and friends, I wish to thank Ukraine for their leadership. Times are difficult, but difficult times need courageous ideas, steps and decisions. What the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian leadership did symbolizes exactly this courage, a courage to stand for European values, European unity and Europe itself. Today's summit serves therefore as an important occasion to honor Ukraine's unwavering courage in defending itself, in defending Europe and the rule of law as the cornerstone of our security architecture. I do agree with all the important remarks my dear colleagues did before me, and I therefore just like to highlight 3 points from a Liechtenstein perspective. Firstly, a peace effort will only be sustainable and lasting if it has Ukraine's consent and deters the crime of aggression. Secondly, Europe's security depends on the security of Ukraine. Liechtenstein calls for a just and lasting peace in line with the international community's clearly established benchmarks set out by the United Nations General Assembly. This includes accountability for war crimes and reparations by the aggressor. And thirdly, but maybe most importantly, we need European answers to European problems, and we need a vision where our continent is heading to. I am therefore thankful for the words of EU President Ursula von der Leyen, the words of President Zelenskiy, and the ones that spoke before me. As most of you know, Liechtenstein reached out in the last month to receive your vision and the thoughts about Europe in these challenging times, and especially against the background of Russia's war in Ukraine. These days, all of you will receive a copy of the Book of Europe. You can see behind me with the subtitle First-Hand Visions of the Future of Europe, which will be released this very Thursday at the Council of Europe in Strasbourg. I am very thankful to all of you who contributed to personal visions of Europe, beginning with the today present Prime Ministers of UK, Spain, Norway, Albania or Ukraine, and more than 30 leaders of Europe. I am also thankful to the Liechtenstein Parliament for their courage and vision to dedicate an additional budget line to finance the reconstruction of Ukraine. With its decision, our Parliament made it very clear that a rebuilt Ukraine must be part of the vision of Europe. We all know that every cloud has a silver lining, and for me, that silver lining of the current situation is that we in Europe stand together to continue to work
on a good, strong, and united Europe. A Europe where, like in a team, every member contributes and adds value based on its capabilities and strengths. Slava Ukraini, Slava Європі.
Слава, дуже вам дякуємо. І тепер я запрошую до виступу його високоповажність пана Люка Фрідена, прем'єр-міністра Люксембургу. Цінуємо вашу допомогу. Прошу.
Dear colleagues, 3 years ago, no, I should say 10 years ago, Russia launched an illegal war of aggression against Ukraine. But all those years, Ukraine's resilience remains unshaken. On this occasion, I would therefore like to pay a tribute to the thousands of brave Ukrainians that have made the ultimate sacrifice, and to the courage of the millions of Ukrainians that continue to endure unimaginable suffering, fear, and to defend our freedom. This is a war, and now is a time when fundamental principles of the world order are tested. And I would therefore like today at this gathering to highlight 3 points. First, when international law is trampled on, when the principles enshrined in the UN Charter are violated, the price we all end up having to pay is high, especially for smaller nations. As Miriam from Ireland also stressed a few moments ago. Ukraine's fight is therefore our fight, because if we allow aggression to succeed, it will happen again. It is up to us to ensure that we preserve a world, yes, way of life for the generations to come, in which international law is respected, upheld by force. Second, Ukraine's future is tied to ours, and European security depends on all of us standing together, firmer and more united than ever. This means strengthening our Europe and our collective support, militarily, financially, and politically, to ensure Ukraine not endures, but prevails. It also means that we continue to support Ukraine to achieve peace through strength, a just and lasting peace, a peace negotiated by Ukraine, by Europe, for Europe. Third, the cost of standing with Ukraine is real. The cost of inaction is far greater. If we let aggression win, we undermine the very foundations of European peace and stability. My country, Luxembourg, will not be a bystander. We will continue to support Ukraine, not just because it is the right thing to do, but because it is vital for our own future. As Europeans, it is our duty to match Ukraine's courage with unwavering solidarity, because it is not just about one country's survival. It is about the future of Europe itself. And therefore, I also welcome Antonio Costa's invitation for an extraordinary European Council in the next week. In January 2005, I stood in Kiev at the end of the Orange Revolution on behalf of the then Luxembourg presidency of the European Union. And I said, Ukraine has a strategic importance for the European Union. That was true at the time, and it is even more true today. Dear Mr. President, dear Volodymyr, you can count on Luxembourg's unwavering support to you, your country, and your people. Thank you.
Дуже вам дякуємо. Ми знову переносимося в особливі місця, і зараз ми підключатимемося з керівництвом Запорізького регіону, який щодня потерпає від російського терору, від щоденних обстрілів. Будь ласка.
Dear Mr. President, dear diplomats and representatives of our partner countries, right now we are speaking to you from underground school, located 7 meters deep. This is because the fighting is taking just 40 missiles can reach Zaporizhia in under 1 minute. That is why 60,000 of our children have to study underground. Right now, behind me, the children are holding photos of destructions of enemy bringings to our region every day. Every day, our enemies fires missiles, Gwildin bombs, and Shahed drones cross the region. As a result, over 17,000 buildings were damaged. As an example, during the last day, the enemy attacked the Zaporizhia region more than 400 times. Despite all this, we stay strong. At the same time, here in Zaporizhia region, thanks for support of Ukrainian people, President Volodymyr Zelenskiy and our international partners, our region continue to support life of hundreds of thousands of people. We are keeping schools, kindergarten, hospitals, and other critical infrastructure operationally and much more. For over 1 million people who left the occupation, Zaporizhia has become a logistic hub, and over 200,000 IDPs stay here. All these people are dependent on your support, dear international partners. We can only stand up to the aggressor with uniting of efforts. We thank everyone who stands by our people in this challenging time. Our region continue to unbreak important work to the front line. Together, we will win.
Mr. President, dear diplomats, partners, and guests, Zaporizhia is going through very hard times. Every day, the enemy attacks us that takes the life of our people. Even with dangers, we keep working. We make sure the city functions, repair buildings, and help people. Thousands of the workers, rescuers, teachers, and volunteers work day and night, sometimes for days without rest. Right now, we are speaking from an underground school built in Zaporizhia with the help of the President and First Lady. For the first time in 3 years, children have returned to school. They sit at their desks and meet their classmates. Teachers finally saw all their students together. There are already several schools like this, but they are more than just schools. They are a symbol of their strength and hope. We thank everyone who supports us. Zaporizhia is a city of strong and brave people. We will stand until peace comes to our land.
Everybody support to Ukraine, together to the victory.
Дуже дякуємо вам за стійкість. А тепер я радий надати слово її високоповажності пані Кріструн Фростадоттір, прем'єр-міністру Ісландії. Дякую за вашу активну підтримку України.
Thank you. Wow, it's so humbling to follow that. I have 2 young daughters, a 6-year-old who's starting school this fall. It's amazing to see what's going on here. I want to thank President Zelenskiy for hosting us here in Kyiv. This is my first visit here, and I'm very honored to be here in a group of people, our colleagues, who are among your most reliable and strongest partners. My presence here today is to underline Iceland's steadfast solidarity with the Ukrainian people and a resolute commitment to the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of Ukraine. February 24th is a dark day in European history. 3 years ago, peace in Europe was shattered. All the norms and principles that have underpinned the rules-based international order since the Second World War were blatantly violated by Russia. Putin's intention was to destroy Ukraine. Instead, for 3 years, the people of Ukraine have stood strong, proud and unwavering against a brutal aggressor that has launched the gravest assault on global peace and security for 80 years. You have stood up for freedom, for democracy, and the rule of law. You have fought for values that a small democracy like mine bases its existence on. Because without respect for international law, without respect for the rules-based order, the security of countries like mine could easily be jeopardized. Zelenskiy, we recognize this. We recognize why you fight. You are fighting for the whole of Europe, but your brave fight for these fundamental values has come at a devastating cost. I express my deep condolences for all the Ukrainian lives that have been lost in Russia's senseless war. A few remarks on the situation as it stands right now. Firstly, this may sound obvious, but today the facts need to be stated. Russia invaded Ukraine. Russia is the aggressor. Ukrainians are defending their homeland and their freedom under the leadership of a democratically elected president and a democratically elected parliament. Secondly, Ukraine is a line of defense for our collective European security, and Iceland understands that. A strong Ukraine is a precondition for a just and lasting peace. Ukraine needs more support, and it must be immediate. Iceland has increased its assistance compared to last year, but we will do more. And I can announce today that my government has decided to more than double our defense-related support to the Ukraine this year to fulfill our commitments. We may be a small country, and our support in absolute terms will echo that. But we must do our share and are unwavering in our support for Ukraine. We stand with our Nordic Baltic allies as well as Europe and support measures going forward, and we will be implementing the 16th sanctions package without delay after it has become effective within the EU. Thirdly, we must project unity among like-minded countries. Europe needs to take the lead in support of Ukraine. On negotiations, there must be nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, and Europe must have a seat at the table too. Lasting peace will not be achieved without security guarantees, and a credible arrangement that is part of a comprehensive peace agreement depends on collective European commitments. We will be willing to contribute to this effort in a way that is fitting. Lastly, Ukraine belongs in the Euro-Atlantic family of free nations. I hope that the EU accession process will be accelerated. NATO membership should remain on the table, and Iceland is fully committed to the language that was agreed upon at the NATO summit in Washington. Iceland supports you. Slava Ukraini.
Дуже дякуємо вам. Тепер я радий запросити його високоповажність пана Мілойка Спаїча, прем'єр-міністра Чорногорії. Цінуємо вашу підтримку.
Dear President Zelensky, dear colleagues, it is both an honor and a privilege to address you today at this pivotal summit, which marks the third anniversary of the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. This is an important moment for us to reaffirm our unity in support of Ukraine's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and freedom. This aggression has escalated into the most profound security and humanitarian crisis Europe has faced in decades. For the last 3 years, we have witnessed the horrors of war and daily attacks on Ukrainians, their homes, and their lives. Yet, they are still struggling for their homeland. But this is not only a fight for Ukraine. This is a fight for freedom, justice, and peace across the globe, aimed at preserving a world where dialogue, not war, resolves disputes. We in the Western Balkans have felt the destabilizing effect of this conflict too. For years, Russia has waged hybrid economic and information warfare aimed at undermining the security of the region. Montenegro condemns Russian ongoing invasion. We stand firm in our support for Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty within its internationally recognized borders. Therefore, since the onset of the war, Montenegro has provided substantial support to Ukraine, including military aid and financial assistance. Montenegro has been the first country outside of the EU which has opened its doors to those fleeing the horrors of war. By providing temporary protection, safe shelter, healthcare, and education for thousands of people from Ukraine, we have demonstrated our shared humanity and shown that the compassion is the truest form of the strength. As a steadfast ally within NATO and the most advanced candidate country in the negotiation process with the EU, Montenegro supports Ukraine's aspirations to join these organizations. We diligently work on necessary reforms and support each other in fulfilling memberships. Moreover, our two countries are currently negotiating an agreement on security cooperation and long-term support. This agreement will strengthen our defense and security ties, focusing on military assistance, defense industry collaboration, intelligence sharing, and countering cyber and hybrid threats. In addition to that, in close cooperation with our EU and NATO partners, Montenegro has fully aligned with sanctions against Russian Federation, targeting critical sectors including finance, energy, transport, and technology. Ladies and gentlemen, Montenegro knows very well the price of peace, the importance of independence, and the sacrifice it demands. Our history has taught us that freedom is a gift earned through resilience, unity, and unwavering resolve. It is in this spirit that we stand by Ukraine in its fight for the principles that bind us all: democracy, economic security, human rights, rule of law, liberty, dignity, and patriotism. While Montenegro strongly supports the beginning of diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict, it is essential that any peace be fair, just, and uphold Ukraine's sovereignty and right to chart its own path and orientation for the future. Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini.
Дуже вам дякуємо. І я радий запросити до слова його високоповажність пана Роберта Голоба, прем'єр-міністра Республіки Словенія. Цінуємо вашу допомогу.
Dear colleagues, today we mark a grim anniversary, 3 years since the start of the Russian brutal, unprovoked and illegal aggression on Ukraine. 3 years of gross violations of international law. Russia has ruthlessly trampled all principles and norms that the international community together agreed to guide us in our relations. Today, even more than usual, my thoughts are with the families, friends, and close ones of all the Ukrainian victims, with all the Ukrainian people. We have said it so many times, and we will continue saying it with the same vigor. Slovenia stands in solidarity with the Ukrainian people as they defend their homeland. And they are not fighting only for their country, but for our common values: freedom, democracy, and human dignity. Slovenia is a staunch supporter of the international law. We all want end of the aggression, but it matters greatly how the peace process ends. The result of the peace talks will determine the future of the European security, and this cannot be decided without Ukraine and Europe. We need a lasting solution and a just peace, based on the UN Charter. We remain a strong supporter of Ukraine on its European path. Decision about the Ukrainian NATO membership is, as agreed at the NATO summit in Washington, irreversible. It must remain at the negotiating table. Slovenia, especially in its capacity as a member of United Nations Security Council, will continue sparing no effort in being active on the diplomatic front in helping Ukraine achieve just and lasting peace with sufficient security guarantees. Many important things have been said today, and I'm glad we gathered in such a big number and showed such strong and unwavering support for Ukraine. Let me just fully support the Finnish President Alex Stubb elements of the process he laid out earlier. We should work along those lines he presented with unity and due diligence. Thank you for your attention, and Slava Ukraini.
Дуже вам дякуємо. Зараз маю честь надати слово Руслану Стефанчуку, голові Верховної Ради України. Прошу вас, пане голово.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, I'd ask you to give the headphones, I'll speak in Ukrainian. Шановний пане президенте, шановний пане прем'єр-міністре, шановні панове президенти, прем'єр-міністри, шановні колеги, високоповажні пані і панове. Насамперед, для мене є великою честю сьогодні звернутися до вас тут, у такому потужному зібранні. Я тільки що повернувся із засідання Верховної Ради України, засідання українського парламенту. І ви знаєте, як і 3 роки тому був наповнений зал, як і 3 роки тому ми почали з небезпеки у вигляді повітряної тривоги, і як і 3 роки тому ми готові робити все заради української перемоги. Але я себе зловив на одній думці, що одного не було того, з'явилося одне те, перепрошую, чого не було 3 роки тому. Це потужна підтримка наших партнерів. І безпоперечно вона прийшла дуже швидко і ніколи після цього нас не полишала. І користуючись цією нагодою, я хочу передати вам великі слова щирої вдячності від імені українського парламенту за послідовну підтримку і допомогу, які усі ці 3 роки так невтомно ви надаєте Україні і українському народові. А ще я хочу подякувати парламентам ваших країн. Я пишаюся тим, що спільно нам усім вдалося консолідувати міжнародне парламентське товариство. Ми змогли зберегти єдність міжнародної демократичної парламентської спільноти. І ми хочемо зберегти нашу трансатлантичну єдність, яка є важливою запорукою демократичної єдності. Дорогі друзі, зарубіжні парламенти у своїй синергії з главами держав і урядами приймали і продовжують приймати важливі рішення задля посилення України і стримування держави-терориста. Дозвольте повідомити вам, що потужний голос парламентаризму світ почує і в день 3-х роковин російської агресії, оскільки понад 20 спікерів і президентка Європейського парламенту виступили спільно із заявою на підтримку України, і її текст ми невдовзі оприлюднимо. Це називається парламентська відповідальність, солідарність і єдність, які нам треба ретельно оберігати. Шановні друзі, ми і надалі зробимо все для того, аби питання військової, фінансової, енергетичної, гуманітарної, політичної підтримки Україні залишалося у фокусі уваги парламентських кіл демократичних країн світу. Адже боремось ми за свою землю, і наша боротьба є істиною. Адже саме ми є жертвою злочинної агресії. І саме ми прагнемо завершення цієї розв'язаної проти нас війни та досягнення справедливого і тривалого миру. Завдяки лідерству президента України Володимира Зеленського раз і назавжди стала на шлях до інтеграції до Європейського Союзу і Україна. Сьогодні ми країна-кандидат на вступ, яка от-от відкриє переговорні кластери. І ми виконуємо своє домашнє завдання і гідно пройдемо цей складний, але єдино можливий шлях. Але водночас ми дуже просимо вас продовжувати підставляти нам своє плече, допомогти вирватися з імперіалістичного російського гніту і впливу. Як народу і країні, які поділяють ваші цінності і хочуть бути частиною європейської цивілізації, ми хочемо повернутися до нашого європейського дому. Суть і поведінка Росії вимагають вирішення питання гарантій безпеки України. І маю підстави стверджувати, що найдієвішою з них прогресивне міжнародне парламентське середовище, як і український парламент, вважає членство у Північно-Атлантичному альянсі. Захищена і сильна Україна не лише зможе протистояти будь-якій агресії, але й продовжувати робити унікальний внесок у зміцнення архітектури європейської безпеки. Пані і панове, сьогодні 3-ті роковини війни. Сьогодні чи не найвідповідальніший момент подальшого розвитку подій. І сьогодні ви, як справжні друзі і партнери, приїхали до Києва або звернулися з відеопосланнями. Бо всі ми добре усвідомлюємо, що нас зібрала не лише дата. Нас зібрала висока відповідальність за майбутнє нашого європейського і світового дому, де має панувати демократія, справедливість і розвиток. Тому будьмо гідні цієї високої цілі. Дякую вам за увагу і слава Україні!
Дякуємо, пане голово. Зараз ми знову переміщуємося в особливе місце української стійкості, в черговий прикордонний регіон Суми. І я маю честь запросити до слова тимчасово виконуючого обов'язки ректора Сумського державного університету Івана Козія. Вам слово.
Mr. President, esteemed representative of partner countries, dear guests, the city of Sumy stands today on the front lines of our country's defense. Our community, alongside the armed forces of Ukraine, is heroically fighting for independence and the future of the next generations. We address you from Sumy State University, whose building was recently destroyed by Russian airstrikes. The enemy seeks to destroy Ukraine's future and block access to education. However, thanks to the heroism of our defenders, the support of the President of Ukraine, and the resilience of our people, our professors, university staff, and students continue an educational process despite all threats and challenges. Thousands of students receive high-quality education, believing in the future and making plans for the recovery and reconstruction of a new Ukraine. The university's strong ties with international partners help us build plans for the future. We hope that once the war is over, we will join forces for common development and progress. I thank the international community for its support. We thank our defenders for their heroism. We thank the President for his attention to Sumy region and the education of Ukrainians. Together, we will win.
Дякуємо вам за вашу стійкість. Повертаємося до наших найближчих союзників. І зараз я радий запросити до виступу його високоповажність пана Антоніо Таяні, віце-прем'єр-міністра, міністра закордонних справ Італії. У цей вирішальний час для Європи цінуємо сильну підтримку Італії. Прошу.
Dear President Zelensky, 3 years already passed from the beginning of the war launched by Russia to invade Ukraine, 3 years of resistance of the Ukrainian people on battlefields and in the cities. The Ukrainian people show the courage on the front line, but also in their everyday life. Today, we join you in paying tribute to them. In all this time, the Italian government has been at your side in the effort for a just peace. This cannot be a surrender of Ukraine. Italy is working with its friends and partners for peace. Peace is our goal. There will be no negotiation without Ukraine and without Europe. It's impossible to achieve an agreement in favor of peace without Ukraine and without Europe. This is very important for us. Peace must come with strong security guarantees for Ukraine. It must be real, strong and lasting to prevent Europe from facing war again. We look forward to discussing together the future of Ukraine, its reconstruction, cultural exchange, trade. We want tourists to visit Ukrainian cities, Ukrainian students to visit Italy and our universities to work together. Italy is in the first line on the reconstruction with a special focus on energy sector, crucial for families, especially in the winter. We are working hard together for organizing an international conference on reconstruction that will host in Rome on the 10 and 11 July. And we want to organize a big success for Ukraine. For 3 difficult years, Italy stood with Ukraine, and it will continue to do so. For a future of peace, growth, prosperity, and most importantly, freedom. Slava Ukraini!
Дуже дякуємо вам. І зараз я маю честь запросити до виступу пана Дениса Шмигаля, прем'єр-міністра України. Прошу вас, пане прем'єр-міністре.
Дякую. Distinguished leaders of Europe and the world, Excellencies, Mr. President, dear colleagues, partners, first of all, let me express the highest appreciation and gratitude to all of you, to your countries, to your nations, for your unwavering support during these 3 years, from the very beginning till today, till our victory, till our mutual victory, I would say. Today we stand at the epicenter of historic events that will define the future of our countries, our people, and the values we cherish. For 3 years, Russia has waged a brutal full-scale war against our country. Its goal is not only to destroy Ukraine, but also to dismantle Europe and the global order itself. They intend to destroy the Europe that gave birth to democracy, the Europe where human dignity and human rights are paramount. For years now, Russia has been waging a hybrid war against European nations, and this reality can no longer be ignored. The enemy targets our core values: freedom, human rights, unity, and cooperation aimed at building our common future. The Kremlin seeks to fragment the European continent piece by piece, aiming to dominate each part individually. Only through collective unity we can effectively resist this aggression. Right now, no country in the world has more frontline experience effectively confronting Russia than Ukraine. Behind us stands a battle-hardened army and an innovative defense industry. Ukraine holds the keys to Europe's energy independence, critical raw materials autonomy, and the potential to establish a major manufacturing and logistical hub for the entire continent. Ukraine always has been and always will be an integral part of the Creator European family. Our unity is the guarantee of our security and economic prosperity. As long as we stand shoulder to shoulder, nothing and no one can defeat us. Today, Ukraine is paying the highest price imaginable in this war against Russia. In lives lost, infrastructure destroyed, and severe economic damage. With our resistance, we have bought Europe valuable time. Time to unify, time to act decisively, and time to implement concrete measures to safeguard the continent from catastrophe. We cannot afford to waste this opportunity. Even years ago, when Russia annexed Crimea and started war in Donbass, many saw it merely as passing clouds in an otherwise clear sky. Today, a massive storm of war rages at the heart of Europe, a storm that could at any moment move further west. That is why now is the moment for decisive and unified action to protect European security. Ukraine is already doing everything possible to defend our shared home, and we will continue to do so. We trust that Europe and the entire international community will respond with courage to this defining moment through decisive actions, visionary leadership, and unwavering solidarity. It's time for a strong, united Europe, a Europe in which a strong Ukraine takes its rightful place. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your participation in today's forum. Slava Ukraini! Thank you.
Дякую вам, шановний пане прем'єр-міністре. Тепер я запрошую до виступу його високоповажність пана Петера Кмеца, віце-прем'єр-міністра із відновлення, стійкості та використання єврофондів Словаччини. Цінуємо надану вашою країною допомогу. Прошу.
Thank you very much, dear President Zelensky, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to address this assembly. In recent years, Europe has witnessed a total war that was not experienced in many decades. 3 years of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, 3 years of hostilities, huge number of human casualties, extreme destruction of the Ukrainian economy and infrastructure. Moreover, past weeks has also shown a shift in the United States' approach to foreign policy. This shift has prompted a necessary re-evaluation of our collective security framework that has been broadly discussed also at this forum. The new US administration has undertaken steps to start the process that might lead to peace talks. However, Ukraine and the EU must be at the table. It's the quality of the outcome that will determine European and Ukrainian security and stability in the longer term. Slovakia has consistently called for a peaceful resolution of the war, which would prevent the loss of civilian life, importantly, maintaining Ukraine's sovereignty and political independence in line with international law. Against this backdrop, we support every effort leading to a comprehensive, just and lasting peace. A comprehensive and just peace is a prerequisite for lasting peace. Robust security guarantees for Ukraine are a critical precondition for achieving sustainable solution. Nevertheless, future engagement of the US in the security guarantees for Ukraine is essential. While Europe can and must take the responsibility for Ukraine, it will not be possible without critical enablers and some form of US assistance. Slovakia, as a neighboring country, is committed to help Ukraine in its integration into the European Union, and we have started necessary steps to facilitate the access of Ukraine to the European markets through improving the transborder infrastructure for roads, electricity, energy, and railways. We will continue doing so that Ukraine feel a full-fledged European partner and in the future a full-fledged member of the European Union. Finally and crucially, Slovakia remains committed to strengthening partnerships and across Europe and across the Atlantic. Despite current shifts, we must coordinate with the US and European allies to ensure that Ukraine receives the security it seeks, and indeed deserves, in the face of ongoing challenges. The resulting architecture should not only deter aggression, but lay the groundwork for lasting peace and prosperity in our shared region. Thank you for your attention.
Дуже вам дякуємо. Наше засідання поступово добігає кінця. І я маю честь передати слово останньому спікеру в цій залі, його високоповажності, пану Бенджаміну Ададу, міністру делегату у справах Європи Французької Республіки. Франція залишається одним із стовпів європейської та глобальної безпеки. Прошу.
Thank you, Mr. President, Excellencies, dear friends. It's an honor to be here today with the Ukrainian people. It's an honor to be speaking alongside the brave soldiers of Ukraine. 3 years ago, Europe woke up from its vacation from history. A permanent member of the Security Council, Russia, chose to attack a sovereign and independent country, Ukraine, which in no way threatened it. After illegally occupying part of Ukraine's territory, after occupying it since 2014, by attacking Ukraine on a full scale in February 2022, Russia blatantly violated once again the principles of international law that we have been building together since 1945. Since February 24th, 2022, the whole world has witnessed the courage and the resistance of the Ukrainian people. The strength and determination with which Ukrainian men and women defend their country, their history, their culture, commands our admiration. By doing so, Ukrainians are protecting the security of Europeans. We now have an essential role to play in the search for a just, solid, and lasting peace to resolve this war which so dangerously affects European security. We must work together, just as we have demonstrated our unity and solidarity since the first day of Russian aggression. Europeans will take their responsibilities for the emergence of a strong and prosperous Ukraine and for ensuring security in Europe in the long term. France will continue to do so as it has demonstrated over the last few weeks in close coordination with our main partners. The coming weeks will be crucial for the future of Ukraine and the European continent. While Russia shows no openness to concessions, we fully support the peaceful strength approach. To that end, now more than ever, it's crucial that we continue to support Ukraine. This, of course, includes strengthened military aid. And in this regard, France continues to play its full part, having recently sent Ukraine Mirage 2005 aircraft and completed the training and equipping of a full brigade of the Anne of Kiev brigade. To meet Ukraine's military, economic, financial, and humanitarian needs, and to support Ukrainian refugees on their territory, the European Union and its member states have spent together more than 135 billion euros, more than any other partner. We must also step up our effort to increase the pressure on Russia and the third country entities supporting its war effort. This is why we welcome today's adoption of a 16 package of sanctions by the European Union and our partners. As a sovereign state, Ukraine must be free to choose its own alliances and destiny. This is why we fully support its European path. Ukraine is, of course, already a member of the European family. A settlement of the conflict without Ukraine would have no future. It would consecrate the superiority of force and aggression over law and pave the way for tomorrow's wars. Nothing must be decided about Ukraine without Ukraine. To be just and lasting, Peace must respect the United Nations Charter and its principles, and thus the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. Russia's aggression constitutes a direct existential threat to the entire European continent. Europe, whose security is at stake, must take part of the negotiation and the long-term security guarantees to resolve the conflict. Nothing must be decided on European security without Europeans. These principles guide our action, guide France's action, and we will not deviate from them. This is a turning point for European security, and history will look at us. Rest assured that we will continue to support Ukraine until a just and durable peace is achieved, a peace that will guarantee Ukraine's security interest, its freedom, and ours collectively on the scale of the European continent. France stands with the Ukrainian people. Slava Ukraini.
Дуже вам дякуємо за ваш виступ. І перед нами ще два коротких відеозвернення від керівництва НАТО та Ради Європи тривалістю близько 3 хвилин.
Ukraine continues to endure with courage that does not falter, hope that does not fade, and a spirit that cannot be broken. NATO has stood with Ukraine throughout Russia's brutal war of aggression to keep the flame of freedom burning. We have kept Ukraine strong by providing arms, equipment, and training. The bravery and resilience of the Ukrainian people are an inspiration to the world. NATO will continue to support and stand with Ukraine and help it through the challenges ahead to ensure this war can end with a just and lasting peace.
Friends, it was 4 o'clock in the morning on 24th February 2022 when the first explosions sounded in Kyiv, Kharkiv, Odessa, and in Mariupol in the Donbas region. The European Convention on Human Rights is being flouted. Our values are under attack. The very next day, the procedure for excluding Russia from the Council of Europe was initiated. 3 years on, our support is unwavering. The Council of Europe stands by Ukraine to obtain reparations, to combat war crimes and impunity, to strengthen democracy, to protect the children of Ukraine, so that Ukraine continues to exist, so that it can return to the path of peace, reconstruction, and justice. Because Ukraine's future is European, we are writing this future together, based on the values we share, those of a free and sovereign Ukraine, those of a just and lasting peace, the values of a strong and united Europe throughout our continent and the world.
Дуже дякуємо. На цьому офіційна частина саміту «Підтримуй Україну» завершується. Ми вдячні нашим гостям, лідерам за незмінну підтримку. Ми сьогодні відчуваємо цю єдність, підтримку ваших народів, ваших країн, ваше лідерство. І оголошую наступний елемент програми – спільну прес-конференцію. Дякуємо.